Night arrives. Everything grows quiet, but inside your head, the noise begins. The day ends, your body asks for rest, and yet your mind starts replaying mistakes, imagining problems, and revisiting moments you can no longer change. Nothing has to happen around you for peace to disappear. All it takes is a mind that doesn't know how to stop. The truth is simple, even if almost no one accepts it. You don't struggle to sleep because you lack tiredness. You struggle because your mind keeps fighting when it should already be letting go. And tonight, you're going to understand something different. That rest doesn't come from forcing yourself to sleep, but from learning how to quiet the mind and release the fear you've been carrying without even noticing. Because that same mind keeping you awake right now can become your refuge. The Stoics understood this well. The goal is not to control every thought, but to stop fighting them. When you stop resisting, the noise begins to lose its strength, and something you've been searching for without realizing finally appears. Calm. Imagine ending the day without inner arguments, without urgency, without that feeling that everything must be solved right now. Just silence, just rest. Tonight, you're not going to battle your mind. You're going to learn how to let it rest with you. If this moment is helping you slow your thoughts and feel calmer, subscribe and stay with us on this journey. And now something personal. When you turn off the lights, what thought or fear is hardest for you to let go of? If you feel like sharing, write it in the comments. Sometimes simply naming it is the first step toward loosening its grip. What you're about to hear doesn't begin with a dramatic crisis, but with something far more common. A mind unable to rest when night finally arrives. From the outside, Bruno seemed to have a stable life. 42 years old, a steady job as a hospital maintenance technician, 2 children, and a partner he had been with for more than a decade. The kind of man who shows up. The one who handles responsibilities. The one who endures quietly without complaining. But when night came and the house fell silent, something inside him never truly rested. He would lie down exhausted, close his eyes, and his mind would begin. Work conversations replaying, past mistakes resurfacing, problems that didn't even exist yet. He tossed and turned for hours, staring at the ceiling, waking up tired before the day had even started. No one knew it, but he hadn't truly slept in months. Everything exploded over something as small as a broken light bulb. On an ordinary Tuesday, his young son threw a ball inside the house and shattered a lamp. Nothing serious, but Bruno lost control. He shouted. His hands trembled. He said things he had never allowed himself to say out loud. That night, he ended up sleeping on the couch, staring into the darkness, unable to switch off his mind. The next morning, his partner told him something that left him silent. "I don't recognize you. It's like you've been holding things in for years, and now you just can't anymore." And she was right. It wasn't the lamp. It wasn't the job. It was a mind that never rested. Years of swallowing frustrations, fears, and worries, while convincing himself everything was fine. Every night he tried to sleep, but his mind kept fighting as if the day had never ended. Then came the anxiety attacks, cold sweat at work, a racing heart in the middle of the night, waking up suddenly, convinced he had forgotten something important. Doctors told him physically he was fine, but he knew the problem wasn't in his body. It was in a mind that didn't know how to let go. One Friday, he left the hospital earlier than usual. He didn't have the energy to go home, so he wandered aimlessly through a nearby park. He wanted air, silence, or maybe just a place where his thoughts would finally lower their volume. That's when he saw him. An older man sitting alone on a bench, a notebook on his lap and several books beside him. He was reading passages from ancient authors out loud to anyone willing to listen. Some people stopped, others kept walking. Bruno passed by several times without approaching, until the man suddenly stopped reading and gestured for him to come closer. When Bruno approached, the man closed his notebook and handed him a folded piece of paper. He said only one thing: "Read this when you're calm, not now." That night, before trying once again to sleep, Bruno unfolded the paper. It read, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your judgment about it." Marcus Aurelius. He didn't fully understand it, but something shifted. For the first time in a long while, instead of fighting his thoughts, he simply watched them in silence. The next day he returned to the park. The man's name was Arturo, a retired philosophy professor. He spoke to Bruno about Stoicism, about how exhaustion often doesn't come from the day itself, but from the constant resistance of the mind. He explained that real rest begins when you stop arguing with what has already happened. Over the following weeks, Bruno started doing something simple, sitting quietly for a few minutes before bed and writing down whatever worried him. Not to solve it, but to take it out of his head. He learned to observe his thoughts without following them. Slowly, night stopped feeling like a battlefield. The problems didn't disappear, but fear began to lose its strength. And for the first time in a long time, Bruno started falling asleep without feeling like he had to fix his entire life before closing his eyes. He didn't become a philosopher or a wise man. He simply learned something essential. When the mind stops fighting, rest arrives on its own. And maybe, my friend, you need that moment too. Not a perfect solution, just the ability to let go of what your mind is still holding long after the day has already ended. First lesson: your greatest rival sleeps beside you. Imagine sharing your home with someone who never leaves. They're there when you open your eyes in the morning, they follow you to work, they sit beside you while you eat, and at night, they climb into bed with you. Sometimes they help you. They organize your day and remind you of important things. But there's a moment when they become dangerous, when you turn off the lights and finally need rest. Instead of letting you sleep, they become creative. They replay old scenes, unfinished conversations, problems that don't even exist yet. And they do it with such convincing logic that it feels completely normal to be negotiating with your own mind at 2 in the morning. That roommate is your mind, and you can't move out of it, my friend. But you can train it to live with you without sabotaging you, especially when night arrives. Because if your mind never learns to listen to you during the day, it won't suddenly offer you peace at night. It will simply do what you've always allowed it to do: run without limits. The problem is that this voice doesn't shout, it whispers. That's why it slips through unnoticed. It makes excuses with the skill of a seasoned lawyer. You don't have time. You're not ready. It's really not that important. And when bedtime comes, it changes its disguise. Now is the perfect moment to think everything through. If you don't solve it today, tomorrow will be worse. Go over it one more time, just in case. You believe you're being responsible, but often it's just fear wearing elegant clothes. Here's a simple everyday example, the kind that seems small but quietly trains you to give up. You decide to start going to the gym. You're dressed, ready, even motivated with music in your headphones. But right before leaving, that voice appears. It looks cloudy, it might rain, better tomorrow. You didn't eat that badly today, it's not urgent. It sounds reasonable, intelligent even, because the mind that holds you back doesn't arrive with chains. It arrives with logic, comfortable justifications that slowly pull you down. And the same mechanism repeats itself at night. You lie down and your mind says, "Just one more minute thinking about this." Replay what you said earlier. Imagine what could go wrong tomorrow. And before you notice, 40 minutes have passed. Sleep is gone, your body is still tired, and you're lying there as if your bed has turned into a meeting room for your anxiety. This is where you need to think like Epictetus, not as an ancient philosopher, but as someone who understood the trap. He lived with almost no control over external circumstances, yet nothing managed to break him internally because he knew the only thing truly his was his mind. He expressed it in a way that, when understood at night, almost feels like breathing again. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And no, this isn't just ancient philosophy. Modern science points in the same direction. Neuroscientist Andrew Huberman explains that many automatic impulses and habits are not failures of willpower. but the result of a poorly trained reward system. In other words, you're not weak. Your brain has simply learned to seek immediate relief. And at night, that relief often looks like thinking more, as if overanalyzing could give you control. But all it really gives you is tension. So let me ask you something directly, because this lesson isn't meant to entertain you. It's meant to help you sleep better. Who is in charge inside your head when the lights go out? If your mind is your greatest rival during the day, at night it becomes even stronger, stealing your rest and leaving you drained for tomorrow. But the opposite is also true. When you begin to guide it, night becomes the place where you recover your strength. Try something simple tonight. No complicated rituals. Before going to bed, choose one sentence that marks the end of the day, as if you were lowering an inner curtain. Today is finished. Or, I'll think about this tomorrow. Say it once, slowly, and stop negotiating. You don't need to convince your mind. You only need to set the boundary. And when the sabotaging voice appears, don't argue with it. Notice it. Give it a name if you want, something that even makes you smile. The dramatic uncle, the fear lawyer, the catastrophe writer. The moment you name it, you separate it from who you are. It stops being me and becomes simply a part of your mind making noise. Then let your body take the lead, not through effort, but through small signals. Relax your jaw, drop your shoulders, exhale slightly longer than you inhale. Your mind can invent endless stories, but the body understands a very simple message. There is no danger now. And once the body understands that, the mind begins to lower its volume. Because in the end, this is the key to the lesson. Your greatest rival sleeps beside you, but it can also become your greatest ally. And that choice is trained moment by moment. Every time you refuse to follow a fearful thought, every time you end the day without fighting, you are winning. Not a dramatic battle, but the most important one in your life. Reclaiming the peace that allows real rest, and waking up with a clearer mind. Tonight, my friend, you don't need to solve everything. You need to lead. And when you lead, calm naturally follows. Lesson 2. Know yourself better than you appear to. Let me ask you something honestly. Do you really know yourself? And I don't mean those silly personality tests that tell you whether you're more of a margarita or 4-cheese pizza. I mean truly knowing yourself. Knowing what drives you, what scares you, and which decisions you're making just because other people expect you to. Because insecurity doesn't come out of nowhere. It shows up when you spend more time looking outward than inward. Think about it. You spend weekends going to plans you don't even enjoy, just because others do. You stay out late at dinners, nodding and smiling, even though deep down you wish you were home reading in peace. You laugh at jokes that don't make you laugh, sign up for projects that don't speak to you, and even choose your clothes based more on what others might think than on what makes you feel good. And here's the catch. The moment you finally think about doing something just for yourself, insecurity shows up. You think about starting that long postponed project, and your mind floods with doubts. What if I'm not good at this? What if they criticize me? What if I fail? You consider saying no to dinner plans to stay in and rest, and guilt creeps in. They're going to think I'm boring. It's like your energy flows freely when it's for others, but gets blocked the moment it's about listening to yourself. That's the real drain. Living in a costume designed for others, while your own voice stays buried. And that disconnection from yourself is the perfect breeding ground for insecurity. Because how are you supposed to feel confident if you never even give yourself the chance to find out who you really are? History reminds us of this again and again. Socrates said, "Know thyself." And yeah, I know, it sounds like a cliche you'd see on a t-shirt, but it goes much deeper. For him, the real enemy wasn't ignorance, but the illusion of knowing everything when you actually know nothing. Self-deception was the root of insecurity, because it led you to make choices without truly understanding who you are, what you want, or what you're avoiding. Seneca also said it beautifully in his letters to Lucilius. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. And do you know what that means for you? that when you don't really know yourself, your mind creates fears, believes them, and multiplies them. But when you learn to observe yourself, you begin to see which fears are real and which are just ghosts made by your mind. That distinction is what takes you from doubt to confidence. So how do you start getting to know yourself beyond the surface? You don't have to go meditate in the Himalayas or blow money on a trendy retreat. It's simpler and also harder. Take a few minutes a day to write about how you reacted to a specific situation and what emotion was underneath. Because often what you call anger isn't anger, it's fear in disguise. What you call indifference might actually be pain you'd rather not face. As psychologist Brené Brown says, truly knowing yourself isn't just about accepting the nice parts, it's also about facing the uncomfortable ones, what you hide, what's hard to admit. Because real confidence doesn't come from pretending you've got it all together. It comes from seeing yourself fully, with both light and shadow, and moving forward anyway. That emotional courage is what turns insecurity into strength. Here's another idea: break out of autopilot. Try this experiment for one day. Question 3 small decisions. Ask yourself, do I really want this coffee, or is it just habit? Do I really want to go to this event, or am I just afraid of disappointing someone? Tiny things, but in those moments, you'll see how often you're acting for others instead of for yourself. And here's a practice that might feel uncomfortable, but it works. Stand in front of the mirror and ask yourself, what am I tolerating that's actually hurting me? Don't aim for pretty answers. Aim for truth. Write it down. You might be surprised to realize that what's been feeding your insecurity isn't what's missing from your life, but what you've been putting up with for far too long. When you finally start to know yourself for real, your life stops being a theater of masks and becomes a clear, honest path. And that's where the shift happens. What used to be insecurity turns into confidence because you no longer need anyone's approval to walk with purpose. So ask yourself today, do you want to keep playing a role in a story written by someone else? Or start writing your own script? Because only by knowing yourself better than you appear to others can you truly eliminate insecurity from your mind and live with the clarity you've been searching for. Lesson 3. The chaos outside programs the chaos inside. There are days when you sit down to work and just can't focus. You open your laptop with every intention of making progress, but your mind is scattered. You jump from one thing to another without finishing anything. You get frustrated, and you think the problem is your willpower, that you need more discipline, more motivation, but you're misdiagnosing the issue. The problem isn't in your head, it's on your desk, in your room, in the mess around you that you've been ignoring for weeks. Because your environment isn't neutral. It's not just a backdrop to your life. It's a constant training field for your mind. And if that field is filled with clutter, with things out of place, with visual stimuli pulling you in 1,000 directions, your mind will respond to that. It will start working the same way, scattered, chaotic, with no clear direction. The Stoics understood this. Seneca lived simply, not because he was poor, he could afford luxuries, but because he chose not to have them. He knew that every unnecessary object is a distraction. Everything you accumulate is one more thing your mind has to process. And he wrote something that's still true today. If you want to live a calm life, devote yourself to what's essential and eliminate what's superfluous. And this isn't abstract philosophy, it's neuroscience. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment, looking for threats, opportunities, stimuli. Every object in your visual field is being processed, whether you're aware of it or not. Even when you think you're ignoring it, your brain is still registering it. And that costs energy. Researchers at Princeton studied this. They asked people to perform cognitive tasks in 2 different settings. One neat and organized, the other messy and filled with stuff. What they discovered was fascinating. In the cluttered space, the brain took longer to process information. Not because the people were slower, but because part of their cognitive capacity was being used to filter out the visual noise. Let me tell you something personal. For months, my desk was a disaster. Piles of papers, tangled cords, empty coffee mugs, open books I wasn't reading anymore. And every time I sat down to work, I felt resistance, like there was some invisible friction holding me back. I thought it was laziness, that I needed more caffeine or more motivation. Until one day, fed up with feeling stuck, I cleared everything off. It wasn't even a deep clean. I just removed the clutter, filed the papers, rolled up the cords, left only what was essential: my laptop, a notebook, a pen. And the next day when I sat down to work, something shifted. No resistance. My mind locked in almost instantly. And I realized the problem was never my discipline. It was my environment. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in military camps, in the middle of war, surrounded by chaos. But he still created order where he could. Mental order through his writing, order in his routines, because he understood that you can't control everything happening outside, but you can control how you respond. And part of that response is creating spaces where your mind can operate without interference. And here's something important. This isn't about extreme minimalism. You don't have to live like a monk in an empty cell. It's about intentionality. Making sure that everything in your space has a reason to be there, not accumulating things out of habit. Creating an environment that helps you think, not one that constantly distracts you. Think about it. How many things around you do you no longer use? How many objects are just sitting there because they've been there for months and you've never bothered to put them away? Every one of those things is noise, and accumulated noise becomes chaos, and external chaos eventually becomes internal chaos. Want to organize your environment? Start small. Don't try to reorganize your whole house in a day. Choose one space, your desk, your nightstand, your kitchen counter, just one, and clear it completely. Remove everything that doesn't need to be there. Leave only the essentials. Then observe how you feel. Notice the difference. That clean space becomes a mental anchor, a place where your mind knows it can function well. And little by little, you expand that order to other areas. Second, create an order ritual. Every night before bed, spend 5 minutes tidying up your main space, not making it perfect, just making it orderly. Wash that mug, put those papers away, fold that shirt. Whatever's out of place, put it where it belongs. Those 5 minutes are an investment, because the next day, when you wake up, your mind will start in a space that doesn't overwhelm it. Third, apply the one in, one out rule. Every time you bring something new into your space, remove something old. Buy a new shirt, donate an old one. Get a new book, give away one you've already read. This prevents buildup and keeps your environment balanced. Matt D'Avella, a content creator who talks a lot about minimalism, did an experiment. He filmed himself working in 2 different setups, one with a clean, organized desk, and one full of clutter, papers, distractions. And he tracked his productivity. In the clean space, he finished tasks in half the time. Not because he was working faster, but because his brain didn't have to constantly filter out visual distractions. Look, my friend, you can have all the productivity techniques in the world. You can read every book on mental discipline. But if your environment is working against you, you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back, because your mind responds to what surrounds it. And if what surrounds it is chaos, it will function chaotically. It's not magic, it's cause and effect. A messy environment creates a messy mind. An organized environment supports a focused mind. And when your mind can operate without obstacles, without constant noise, without visual interference, then it can obey you. It can focus on what you ask of it. It can think clearly. So evaluate your space. Look at it honestly. And ask yourself, does this environment help me be who I want to be? Or is it sabotaging me without me even noticing? And if the answer is sabotage, you already know what to do. You don't need a complete overhaul. Just start. One space at a time, one item at a time, until your environment becomes an ally, not an enemy. Now quick, tell me one part of your space you need to organize first. Write it down. Sometimes just putting it into words is the first step. Lesson 4. Comfort is holding you back. There's a truth most people don't want to accept. When your mind isn't trained, It doesn't look for what makes you grow. It looks for what's easy, immediate, familiar. It sells you comfort as rest. But what it's really selling is stagnation. Because comfort isn't always what you need. Sometimes it's what keeps you stuck. Picture a carnivorous plant wrapping around you. At first it feels soft, cozy, even pleasant. You relax, you settle in. But little by little, without noticing, the leaves begin to close. You can't stretch out anymore, can't move, can't escape. That's how comfort works. It doesn't arrive with shouts. It arrives with caresses. It tells you, relax, you'll do it tomorrow, while each day it traps you a little more. And when you finally open your eyes, you realize you're still in the same place, only weaker. Marcus Aurelius understood this clearly. His philosophy wasn't made of pretty words but of firm action. He said, "Do every act of your life as though it were the last." And he didn't say it to sound deep. He said it because he knew that if he gave in to immediate pleasure, if he fell into the trap of laziness, he'd be turning his back on his purpose. And you? How many times have you turned your back on yours for 5 minutes of rest? Picture this. You promised yourself you were going to eat healthier. It wasn't a whim. Your doctor warned you, your sugar levels are sky high, constant fatigue isn't normal, and the extra weight is taking a toll. You said this time you were serious. You were going to cook more at home, stay away from ultra-processed food, take care of your body. But nighttime comes. You're exhausted. You get home, kick off your shoes, and see the ingredients on the counter. Broccoli, brown rice, a chicken breast waiting for days. But you think, I've got to chop it, wash it, cook it. And your finger, almost on its own, opens the fast food app. Just today, you tell yourself, tomorrow I'll start. But tomorrow will be the same. Because, no, my friend, this isn't a lack of willpower. It's comfort in disguise. And that comfort is holding you back more than any real problem. And that's what happens to many. Their mind breaks them because they say, I've got nothing left in me, or I just need to disconnect. But hear this. There are people who've learned to master that escape reflex. People who, like you, also came home exhausted, unmotivated, full of excuses. The difference? They chose to stop obeying them. One of them, Alex Hormozy, always says, the thing you most need to do is usually the thing you least want to do. And he doesn't dress it up or sugarcoat it, because he knows that every time you choose the hard thing, the uncomfortable thing, you're building mental muscle. You'll see him working even when he hasn't slept well. Not because he has more energy than you, but because he stopped negotiating with his mind. The smartest thing you can do is eliminate temptation before it shows up. If you know you'll be too tired to cook when you get home, prep everything in advance. Chop the ingredients in the morning, cook extra and save portions, or even pay someone once a week to prep meals for you if you can. Remove the friction, and the habit becomes inevitable. Also, schedule a discomfort hour each day. 60 minutes where you do exactly what you always avoid. For example, right after dinner, instead of lying down, stretch for 10 minutes, spend 10 reading about nutrition, and 30 trying out simple recipes. Training your mind is most effective when you do it exactly when you don't feel like it, and change how you talk about it. Don't say, this is hard for me. Say, this is training me. When you're cooking while tired, don't see it as punishment. See it as an investment. Every steamed broccoli, every minute without sugar, is a brick in your mental fortress. Your mind can drive you to success or drown you in excuses, but that decision doesn't happen with big goals. It happens in those tiny moments when you choose between what's easy and what builds you. Now I want you to do something. Head to the comments and tell us what's the discomfort you're going to face today. Write it down and let this community support you. Because when you share it, it gets lighter. And when you act on it, you transform. Lesson 5. You are what you train every day. The Stoics had a clear obsession. What you repeat ends up shaping who you are. Seneca said it brilliantly. Each day is a miniature life. And think about how powerful that is. You're not the sum of big decisions, but of the small actions you repeat again and again. What you choose today, even if it seems tiny, becomes a brick in the foundation of who you'll be tomorrow. Imagine you tell yourself every day, "I'm so forgetful." It might sound harmless, even like a joke, but once it becomes a habit, your mind starts acting accordingly. You look for proof that it's true. You forget your keys and think, "Of course I'm always scatterbrained." You make a mistake at work and use it as more evidence. And over time, that phrase stops being an opinion and becomes your identity. Epictetus warned us, the danger isn't what happens, but how we interpret it. And if every interpretation is, "I failed because that's just who I am," your mind starts working in line with that idea. If what you keep repeating is, "I'm not consistent," then every project you start already carries its ending in the first step. What you think and practice daily becomes an invisible coach, silently guiding your next move. Now picture a real-life scenario. You want to start a personal project, something that excites you. At first you're pumped, but as soon as the first challenge shows up, you say, "I'm not consistent. I'll probably quit halfway." And just like that, you've sabotaged yourself. Because even if you have the talent, the identity you repeat every day is the one that wins. And if what you've been training is procrastination, guess what you're going to get better at? Now look at what the Stoics did. They didn't settle for repeating the same thing. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up saying, "Today I'll be wise." What he did was write every morning, reflect, remind himself of his principles, and apply them. And by repeating those simple acts, he actually became wise. His character wasn't built by big declarations, but by small, steady repetitions day after day. Here's the good news. You can reverse that mental highway. Start by changing the language. Instead of saying, "I'm bad at this," try saying, "Right now I feel unsure, but I can improve." That phrase isn't magic, but it opens a door. Then every time you face that situation again, even in a small way, you're building a different path. Over time, your brain learns to follow that new route more easily. You might be thinking, saying it sounds too easy. But think, what would a Stoic do? He wouldn't get stuck in that label. He'd look for a concrete action to retrain his mind. For example, before speaking in public, stand in front of the mirror, straighten your back, and smile. And while you're at it, remember a time when you succeeded at something that felt hard. Maybe a test you passed, a conversation you feared that went well, anything where you proved yourself. That gesture isn't just symbolic, it's a mental anchor. With repetition, your brain starts linking public speaking, not with fear, but with confidence. Seneca compared life to a sculptor standing before a block of marble. Each chisel strike seemed insignificant, but over time the form appeared. Your habits are those strikes. If you keep repeating complaints, you're carving a weary face. If you repeat discipline, you're shaping a strong character. And the best part is, the sculpture isn't finished. You still get to decide what shape it takes. This isn't about changing everything at once. Start by noticing what you repeat without even thinking. That phrase you always use to describe yourself. That excuse that slips out of your mouth before you even realize. Once you spot it, ask yourself, do I want to keep training this version of me, or is it time to start shaping a new one? Then take action, even if it's something small. Because in the end, your destiny isn't written in big speeches or New Year's resolutions. It's shaped by the small acts you repeat until they become who you are. Remember, what you repeat becomes your identity. And if you change what you repeat, you change your mind. And with that, you transform your life. Tell me in the comments, what thought or habit are you going to start training today to move closer to the best version of yourself? And if you want to turn it into a commitment, write, today I chisel my mind to transform my life. Sixth lesson. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Has this ever happened to you? You set out to do something, but instead of getting started, you get stuck in the tiniest details. You adjust the color of an icon 17 times in a presentation. You go to send a voice note on WhatsApp and record 10 versions of the same greeting. The first one sounded too serious. The second one felt fake. And just like that, you're caught in a loop. Or you leave an email sitting in drafts because you can't decide whether to end it with "best regards" or "warm wishes." You call it perfectionism or high standards, but really, it's just insecurity in a fancy jacket. The truth is, insecurity rarely shows up yelling. It usually whispers in silence, disguised as "not yet." It's like being stuck at a traffic light that never turns green. You stay in this eternal yellow, always about to, always waiting. And while you wait for that perfect moment that never comes, life moves on. What could have been an experience, an opportunity, or a project stays frozen. It reminds me of the story of a chef who opened what he called a beta restaurant. His idea was simple: serve dishes at 80%, let customers try them, then improve them based on feedback. The place was packed. Right across the street, another chef had kept his restaurant closed for 2 years, waiting until his menu was flawless. Guess who made progress? One understood that improvement happens in public. The other stayed stuck in his cave. And that's the problem. Chasing perfection takes you further away from sharing what's inside you. You work so hard to make everything flawless that you forget the most important part: doing it. You keep waiting for the perfect moment, like it's going to show up on its own, but it won't. Marcus Aurelius wrote it clearly in his Meditations. Don't wait for Plato's Republic. Be content if you're moving forward, even just a little. In other words, stop putting your life on hold for something ideal. Celebrate small progress. That's where true strength lives. Picture him today with a digital task board, dragging a card to done with a smile. Don't wait for Plato's Republic or the perfect filter. And here's the thing: science backs it up. Researchers like Thomas Curran and Andrew Hill studied decades of data and found that perfectionism has skyrocketed in recent generations. And with that, so have anxiety and depression. More perfection means less well-being. We're not talking about discipline. We're talking about insecurity disguised as high standards. Think of a real example from your life. Let's say you're putting together a portfolio for a project. You've spent 3 weeks deciding whether thumbnail 3 needs a 12% or 16% shadow. Meanwhile, someone else with fewer doubts already sent theirs in, got feedback, improved it in 2 rounds, and is now getting paid. The difference wasn't talent, it was action. Here's the key. Every time you take action, even while afraid, you send a message to your mind. You say, "I can trust myself." And that's worth more than any perfection. My friend, insecurity is defeated through action, not when everything is flawless, but when you have the courage to start, even clumsily. Because confidence isn't found in waiting, it's built. So what can you do to break out of that mental loop where insecurity keeps you stuck? Try something simple. First, try the public 80-20. Take something you're working on, anything, a text, a design, a video. Instead of tweaking it endlessly, stop when it's 80% done. Share that version, even if it feels unfinished. Show it to a friend, send it to a client, or post it in your community. Let the world give you feedback and improve it along the way. Trust me, moving forward with something imperfect teaches you more than spending weeks locked in, fixing a detail no one will ever notice. Second, try the error date. Set a 25-minute timer and pick a task you've been avoiding out of fear of messing up. Send that email, record that video, show that rough draft. Do it in that time and send it as it is. When that little voice pops up saying it's not perfect, answer out loud, "Progress matters more than appearance." And keep going. My friend, next time perfection tries to keep you parked, remember that traffic light stuck on yellow. If you wait for it to turn green, you'll be stuck there forever. You're the one who has to move, even if you're unsure. Because in the end, confidence isn't built by avoiding mistakes. It's built by daring to try so many times that you stop fearing them. So tell me, what could you finally let go of this week if you stopped chasing perfection? If you truly want to eliminate insecurity from your mind, the answer isn't perfection, it's movement. The courage to show up, to fail, and to learn. Confidence is born from repetition, not from a lack of mistakes. Lesson 7. Your mind doesn't need drama, it needs direction. Have you ever noticed that when something goes wrong, your mind doesn't waste a second before writing the worst possible script? As if you had an inner playwright determined to turn every setback into a Greek tragedy. The Stoics knew that impulse was real, but they also understood something even more important. The mind doesn't need more fire. It needs someone to hold the wheel. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a viral video of a pilot landing a commercial plane in brutal crosswinds. The aircraft sways. It tilts dangerously to one side. Passengers are screaming. Anyone would think it's the perfect moment to panic. But if you listen to the cockpit recording, what you hear is completely different. The pilot's voice is calm, steady. He's not denying the danger. He's simply not dramatizing it. He's making adjustments, communicating with the tower, making decisions. And the plane lands perfectly. In an interview later, they asked him how he stayed calm, and his answer was simple. Panic doesn't land planes. Decisions do. That difference, the ability to shift from drama to decision in the middle of chaos, is exactly what separates a mind that obeys you from a mind that drags you down. It's not that one avoids problems. It's that one turns every crisis into a disaster movie, while the other simply asks, "What do I do now?" And that one question changes everything, but most people don't ask that question. They ask the other one, the one that paralyzes you. Why is this happening to me? Why now? Why do I always get the worst of it? And while your mind is busy looking for blame or excuses, time keeps moving. The problem is still there, and you're still stuck inside a story that leads nowhere. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Imagine two people lose their job on the same day. Same company, same role, same context. The first person gets home and their mind kicks in. It's over. At my age, who's going to hire me? I'm going to lose the house. I won't be able to support my family. This is the end. And they spend days, even weeks, stuck in that story, replaying the injustice, imagining worse and worse outcomes. Their mind is completely hijacked by drama. The second person feels the shock too. They're also scared. They're also hurt. But after allowing themselves to feel that, they ask a different question. What can I do today? And even if the answer is small, updating their resume, calling a contact, now there's movement, there's direction. And that direction, no matter how small, keeps the mind focused on what can be controlled. 6 months later, the first person is probably still mentally stuck. Maybe they found another job, but they carry the resentment like a heavy backpack. The second person didn't just move forward, they learned, they grew, because they didn't let their mind dramatize to the point of paralysis. Marcus Aurelius had an entire empire on his shoulders, wars on multiple fronts, political betrayal, the deaths of several of his children, epidemics killing thousands. A regular person would have had a mental breakdown, turned every crisis into the downfall of Rome. But in his private writings, he constantly reminded himself, confine the impression to the present. Don't add anything from your own imagination. He knew the real enemy wasn't what was happening outside. It was what his mind could do with it if left unchecked. And this isn't just ancient philosophy. Cognitive psychology backs it up with data. There's a phenomenon called catastrophizing. It's when your mind takes a fact and spins it into the worst-case scenario. Studies show that people who catastrophize consistently experience higher levels of anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. Not because worse things happen to them, but because their interpretation of events multiplies the suffering. An unanswered message becomes total rejection. A mistake at work becomes an imminent firing. One awkward conversation becomes the end of a relationship. And your mind, constantly fed these narratives, goes into survival mode. And a mind stuck in survival mode can't think clearly. It can't make sound decisions. It can only react out of fear. Epictetus saw it in his own students. They came to him with real problems but catastrophic interpretations. And he told them something that sounds harsh, but was absolutely necessary. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. He wasn't minimizing their struggles. He was pointing to where the real power was, in the meaning you give to what happens. So how do you train your mind to stop dramatizing everything? First, you need to understand that drama feels productive. It feels like you're doing something, like you're preparing for the worst, but you're not preparing. You're draining yourself before the problem even arrives. It's like running a mental marathon before the real race even starts. And by the time it does, you've got no energy left. There's one question that cuts through drama like a knife. Did this already happen, or am I making it up? Because if you're honest, 90% of what stresses you out hasn't actually happened. They're future scenarios your mind is writing, and most of them never will happen. But while you're writing them, you suffer as if they already did. That's voluntary suffering. And the worst part is, when something really bad happens, you've already burned through your energy imagining fake disasters. When you catch your mind going into catastrophe mode, there's something that works better than trying to shut down the thoughts. Exaggerate them on purpose. If your mind says, "This is going to go wrong," take it further. Yes, it'll go so wrong, I'll lose everything. End up living in a cardboard box, talking to pigeons and using newspapers as blankets. Sounds ridiculous, right? That's the point. When you consciously exaggerate the drama, your brain sees the absurdity. And from there, it can come back to reality. Cognitive therapists use this technique all the time. It's called cognitive diffusion. And it works because it breaks the seriousness with which you treat catastrophic thoughts. You're not denying that something could go wrong. You're just stripping the thought of its absolute power. You're reminding your mind, not every thought is a prophecy. Another strategy that completely shifts your mental state is replacing why with what now. Because why did this happen to me keeps you in the past, blaming, justifying, repeating the story over and over. But what can I do now pulls you into the present, into what you control, into action. And action breaks the drama, always. The moment you start moving, even if it's just baby steps, your mind escapes the loop. Because a mind in motion doesn't have time to get trapped in endless mental stories. It's busy doing, solving, progressing. And with each action, no matter how small, you're teaching your mind that problems don't paralyze you, that you can respond, that you can decide. And here's something few people understand. Shifting from drama to direction doesn't mean denying how you feel. If something hurts, it hurts. If something scares you, it scares you. The point isn't to pretend everything's fine. The point is not to get stuck there, not to settle into suffering as if it's your only option. Feeling is human. Dramatizing is a choice. There's a difference between processing an emotion and feeding it until it turns into a full-blown mental soap opera. Processing is, this hurts. I need time to feel it. Dramatizing is, this hurts, and this always happens to me, and I'll never get out of this, and everything is lost. One helps you heal. The other keeps you wounded. Navy SEALs train something called tactical breathing for high-stress situations. When they're in the middle of chaos, they don't try to erase the fear. They recognize it. Then they pause physically. Inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Hold for 4. That simple pattern tells the brain, we're okay. We can think. We're not in immediate danger. And from that space, they can make decisions, not just react. You can do the same. When your mind starts spiraling into drama, don't fight the thoughts. Acknowledge them. Then create a pause. Breathe. Ask, which part of this is real and which part is just a story? That question gives you back control, because you may not be able to change what's real, but you can stop feeding the story. Look, my friend, life will keep bringing problems. There's no escaping that. But the difference between being dragged by every problem and facing each one with clarity is entirely in your hands. Not in the circumstances, but in how you choose to interpret and respond to them. Lesson 8. Your excuses are chaining you down. I'm not going out today because it's cloudy. I'll start on Monday. I need to feel inspired. I just don't have the right setup right now. It's cold, so I won't shower. I'll do it tomorrow. It sounds absurd when you hear it out loud. But if you stop and think, how many times have you told yourself something just as ridiculous to avoid doing what you know you need to do? That's the thing about excuses. They seem harmless, they stroke your ego, and they convince you it's better to stay put. And the more you repeat them, the more comfortable they become. Imagine them like a pair of shoes that at first feel padded, soft, perfect for walking through life without pressure. But over time you realize they're too tight. They rub, they cause blisters, and when you finally take them off, you see the marks they've left behind. That's what excuses do. They protect you, yes, but at the cost of holding you back. Musonius Rufus, one of the great Stoic teachers, made it crystal clear in a quote worth gold. The true philosopher is the one who does what is right, even when no one is watching. Because the problem with excuses isn't just that they slow you down, it's that they pull you away from yourself, from what you know you should be doing, from your own integrity. And that's the point. If you only do the right thing when someone's watching, or if you avoid it because you're afraid to fail, then you're not choosing freely. You're being dragged by your own mind, trained to retreat before you've even tried. And just like that, without noticing, you become someone who gives up before they've even started. Now picture this. You promised yourself that this month you'd finally get that project off the ground. You even have the first video halfway ready. You've got the idea, the script, the message. But when it's time to record, the buts show up. The lighting's not great. I don't have the right camera. Better to wait for the weekend. And you accept it, because it sounds reasonable, like a thoughtful decision. But if you're being honest with yourself, you know you've used that same excuse before. Many times, and every time you use it, you drift further away from what you really want to do. You know why this happens? As Spanish neurolinguist Luz Rayo explains, when an excuse gets repeated more than 3 times, it's no longer an explanation. It's a defense, a wall your mind builds to protect you from fear. Because deep down, you're not afraid of the lighting. You're afraid of being exposed, of having to prove your worth, of feeling vulnerable. But if you don't face it, that wall won't shrink. It'll keep growing. And here's where you need to make a real decision. Are you going to keep listening to that part of your mind that's chaining you down? Or are you going to teach it a new way? Because this is where everything begins, in what you think, what you feel, and what you decide each day. Your mind is either your engine or the brake that keeps you stuck. Ready to stop hiding behind excuses? Start with this. First, make a list, but a different kind of list. Write down everything you've put off this month. No filters, no fluff. And next to each one, write the exact excuse you used. Just doing this already opens your eyes, because seeing your justifications written out strips them of their power. It shows you they weren't reasons. They were fears dressed up in clever words. Second, make a commitment with someone else. Tell them exactly what you're going to do and when. Set a date, a time, and make sure they're there to witness it. Because when someone else is expecting it, your mind shifts. Later is no longer an option. You can't hide anymore. And here's the best part. When you do it, when you follow through, your mind takes note and starts training itself to move forward, not retreat. My friend, if every excuse were a stone, how many more are you going to carry before you can't move at all? Because every "I'll start tomorrow," every "not today," every "maybe later" piles up. And in the end, it's not that you can't move forward, it's that you've trained your mind to stop so often. It's forgotten how to move. 9th lesson, you shine even without applause. Imagine your life is a play. The curtain is ready to rise, the lights are on, and you already know your role. But instead of acting, you just stand there, frozen in the middle of the stage, staring at the audience, waiting for someone to applaud before you say your first line. Absurd, right? And yet, that's how many people live, stuck, waiting for someone else's approval before they dare to take action. The Stoics would have seen this as a modern tragedy. Epictetus put it bluntly, other people's opinions are contagious, and if you're not careful, you start adopting attitudes that aren't even yours. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, could have easily become a slave to validation. Everyone had an opinion about his decisions. Senators, generals, even the people on the street. If he'd tried to please them all, he would have ended up a puppet, pulled in every direction. His secret? Anchoring himself in what he knew was right, even when no one clapped. Sound familiar? You're standing in front of your closet, trying to pick an outfit, and the first thing you think is, what will people say if I wear this? You want to start going to the gym, but your motivation fades because your friends aren't up for it. You've got a great project idea, but you pause, waiting for your family to say, "Go for it, that's a great plan." And if you don't get that signal, your confidence drops instantly. Can't you see the problem? Your life stops being yours. It becomes a board game where everyone else moves your pieces. I can't imagine a Stoic living like that. Seneca wrote each night about what he'd done that day, but not to show anyone, only for himself. It was a private dialogue. He didn't need pats on the back or congratulations. He practiced what we now call emotional independence, being your own judge, not depending on external applause. So here's something practical you can try, something that could truly shift the way you think. What I call an invisibility exercise. Do something you'd normally post or talk about, but this time do it quietly, just for you. If you write, write without publishing. If you love to dance, dance in your room with no one watching. If you go to the gym, don't post a photo. Live the moment as if no one in the world will ever know. At first, it might feel awkward, even scary. But then, you'll find something liberating. You don't need anyone watching to enjoy what you do. Now think about this. What would happen if you made an important decision without asking anyone's opinion? I'm not talking about being reckless. I'm talking about trusting your own judgment. Most of the time, the worst-case scenario you imagine isn't as bad as you think. But the best-case scenario? That's where you finally feel like your life is guided by your compass, not by anyone else's applause. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "The opinion of others is smoke." And how true that is. Smoke fades. It doesn't feed you. It doesn't support you. If you build your life on it, you'll always be hungry for more. But if you build from the inside, your confidence won't depend on whether anyone claps or not. My friend, I'd really like you to try this. Truly. Spend an entire day without asking for validation. Don't ask if your decision is okay. Don't check social media to see if you got likes. Don't fish for approval. Live one day as if you were invisible to the world. I promise, you'll discover a freedom you didn't know you were missing. So, tell me, do you dare live a full day without seeking validation, as if there were no audience? Try it, and come back in a few days to tell us in the comments how it went. We want to hear from you, because in the end, true strength doesn't come from the crowd that celebrates you, but from the quiet certainty that you're doing the right thing, even when no one's watching. That is the path of self-trust, the only one that truly transforms your life. Lesson 10. Turn doubt into action. Have you noticed that the more you think about something, the bigger and harder it seems? It's like blowing up a balloon. One breath, nothing major. Another breath, it grows. By the fifth, you're no longer enjoying it. You're just bracing for the pop. And in the end, the fear isn't in the balloon. It's in your head, telling you to stop before something explodes. That's exactly how insecurity works. It grows on its own while you wait for the perfect moment. And if you need proof of what it means to act even when afraid, listen to this. Picture the scene. The year is 1932. Amelia Earhart stands on the runway, staring at a plane that looks too fragile for the ocean waiting ahead. It's cold, the wind is fierce, and no one around her can guarantee success. She could have stayed on the ground, frozen by doubt. She could have told herself, "I'm not ready. Maybe later." But she didn't. She climbed into the cockpit, fastened her helmet, and took off. Hours later, she became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. And when asked how she did it, her answer was simple. The most difficult thing is the decision to act. The rest is merely tenacity. Amelia didn't wait for fear to go away. She didn't let doubt take over her mind. She chose to move, and that action is what transformed fear into confidence. Seneca warned of this in his letters. It's not that we have little time, but that we waste a lot. And wasting time isn't just lounging on the couch. It's also getting stuck in loops of overthinking, going over the same, what if I fail? And what if this doesn't work, again and again. Every minute spent in that cycle is fuel for insecurity. Here's something curious. Your brain operates in a very specific way. When you just think, worry grows and multiplies. But the moment you act, even in a tiny way, everything changes. It's as if the brain finally gets the message, okay, we're doing this. That spark cuts through the noise, and insecurity begins to shrink. Now imagine you've been thinking of launching an online project. You've spent months watching tutorials, signing up for courses, designing logos, picking out colors, but still, nothing's published. You tell yourself you're preparing, but really you're feeding insecurity. Meanwhile, someone with less experience already launched a rough version, got feedback, improved along the way, and is making progress. The difference wasn't talent, it was movement. So what can you do to stop letting insecurity run the show? Start with something ridiculously small. If you haven't posted anything in months, publish a simple landing page. Your hand might shake as you hit publish, but that tiny action is worth more than 100 unstarted courses sitting in your downloads folder. Next, instead of obsessing over getting everything perfect, aim to get real feedback. Share your idea with a couple of trusted people and ask what they think. That input is gold. It helps you improve while you move forward, instead of staying trapped in theory. And finally, give yourself a weekly challenge. Write it down and stick to it, even if no one's watching. Something like, this week I publish my first article, or this week I send out a pitch email. It doesn't matter if it looks small from the outside. What matters is that it's real. When you follow through, even if it's uncomfortable, your brain gets the message, I can trust myself. My friend, every time you choose to act, even in a small way, you are turning insecurity into real confidence. Doubt screams the loudest when you're standing still, but it goes quiet the moment you take a step. Amelia Earhart knew it. The hardest part is making the decision to act. Everything else follows, and that's the key. Confidence doesn't appear when fear vanishes. It shows up when you decide to move despite the fear. Because the only way to eliminate insecurity from your mind is to stop inflating the balloon and dare to let it go. Lesson 11. Train your mind every day. My friend, think of a gladiator. He doesn't wait for the day of the fight to learn how to wield his sword. He trains beforehand every single day, when no one's watching, when there's no crowd cheering. Because he knows that if he walks into the arena unprepared, it'll be too late. And your mind works exactly the same way. If you don't train it daily, the moment life throws a punch, you'll have nothing to defend yourself with. The Stoics saw life as an inner battlefield. Epictetus compared the soul to an athlete, one who must train with steady effort if they want to be ready for the competition. And Marcus Aurelius lived that practice. He wrote every morning and every night, like someone sharpening their blade before entering the arena. His training wasn't lifting weights, it was clarity, calm, and discipline. Today, most people neglect that kind of training. They prepare for a test, a job interview, a big date, but for everyday life, nothing. And then it only takes a bit of criticism for their confidence to collapse. One unexpected problem sends them into panic. One bad day and they feel defeated. A mind without training is like a warrior without armor. Any hit cuts deep. So how do you train yours? You don't need some complicated ritual. Every time you resist the urge to lash out in anger, you're training. Every time you do what you know you must, even when you don't feel like it, you're building discipline. Every time you voluntarily step into discomfort, going for a walk in the cold, putting your phone away to focus, daring to speak when fear tells you to stay quiet, you're lifting mental weight. It's not about big, flashy efforts. It's about invisible repetitions. Think of it this way. Your mind is like a river. If you let it run wild without guidance, it overflows and causes destruction. But if you build channels, if you shape it day after day, That same water becomes a source of energy, powering mills, giving life to everything around it. Your mental training is that structure. It's those small, repeated habits that turn chaos into strength. Will Smith once said, "I don't consider myself particularly talented, but I have a ridiculous work ethic." What he called work ethic is really mental discipline, a mind trained to do what needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. And that's what makes the difference between those who just wish for a better life and those who build one. Training your mind every day isn't optional. It's the line between those who live at the mercy of circumstance and those who decide their direction. Don't wait for life to hit hard before you wake up. Start now. One small action today, another one tomorrow, and when the hard moment finally comes, you'll realize you're already stronger than you thought. Because, my friend, the mind isn't forged in motivational speeches or big plans. It's forged in what you do when no one's watching, in those quiet, invisible battles that, when added up, turn you into someone unstoppable. Lesson 12. Resistance isn't your enemy. It's your trainer. Seneca had everything a person could want in ancient Rome: immense wealth, political power as the emperor's advisor, intellectual respect. But Nero, his student, grew more erratic and dangerous with time. And one day, everything changed. Nero accused him of conspiracy. He exiled him, stripped him of all his property, and finally, years later, ordered him to take his own life. Seneca knew this could happen. He'd seen others fall before him, and for years he had been mentally preparing for loss, not to avoid it, but to face it. He voluntarily practiced discomfort. He slept on hard beds, fasted when he didn't need to, walked under the blazing sun. People looked at him like he was crazy. Why choose difficulty when comfort is an option? But Seneca understood something most people never do. Constant comfort makes you weak. And when life inevitably hits you, if you've never practiced resistance, you collapse. He once wrote something that sounds harsh but is absolutely true. It is in times of security that the soul must prepare for difficulty. While fortune smiles, the spirit must strengthen its armor. So when his most difficult moment finally came, when he received the order to die, he didn't collapse. He didn't beg. He didn't dramatize. He faced his end with a calmness that shocked even his executioners, because he had spent years training his mind for that exact moment. Resistance hadn't been his enemy. It had been his most effective teacher. That's the part no one tells you about mastering your mind. It's not built when everything is going well. It's built precisely when everything goes wrong. And if you only try to strengthen your mind during peaceful times, you're training with toy weights. When the real weight comes, you won't be able to lift it. Most people live the opposite way. They avoid discomfort like it's poison, always looking for the easiest route, the most comfortable option. And then they wonder why, when a real crisis hits, their mind completely fails them. But it didn't abandon them. It was simply never trained to handle real pressure. There's something that happens to muscles that people forget to apply to the mind. They don't grow when they're relaxed. They grow when they're under resistance. When you lift weight that pushes you beyond your current capacity, your muscle fibers break down at a microscopic level. And it's in that damage, in that controlled stress, that the body says, "We need to be stronger." And it rebuilds tougher. Your mind works exactly the same way. But while most people understand the need to go to the gym to build physical strength, when it comes to the mind, they do the opposite. They avoid the mental gym. They run from anything uncomfortable. And then they complain about having a weak mind. Marcus Aurelius lived this in a brutal way. He wasn't a philosopher writing from the comfort of a library. He was an emperor writing his meditations from military camps, facing constant war, political betrayal, epidemics that killed thousands, and the loss of several of his children. He had every reason to break down, but instead he wrote something that should be tattooed in every mental gym: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't speaking in theory. He was describing his reality. Every obstacle he faced wasn't a frustrating detour. It was the path. It was the opportunity to strengthen exactly what he needed to lead. In psychology, there's a documented phenomenon called hormesis. It's when a small dose of stress makes an organism more resilient. You see it in plants. If you completely protect them from the wind, they develop weak stems that snap easily. But if you expose them to moderate wind, they grow thicker, stronger. Stress doesn't weaken them. It strengthens them. Humans work the same way. There are fascinating studies on this. Researchers at the University of Buffalo followed people for years to track their exposure to adversity. And they found something counterintuitive. People who had experienced moderate adversity had better mental health and more resilience than those who lived completely problem-free lives. It's not that adversity is good in itself. It's that it teaches you one crucial lesson. You can survive hard things, and that confidence becomes real mental strength. This only works if you change your relationship with difficulty. If you keep seeing every problem as an unfair enemy that you shouldn't have to face, resistance will just drain you. But if you start seeing it as training, as the exact opportunity to build what you need to build, you become more capable every day. Epictetus, who was a slave before becoming a philosopher, understood this better than anyone. He had zero control over his external situation. He couldn't choose where to live, what to do, not even over his own body. But he discovered something fundamental. Even if he couldn't control what happened to him, he could control how he responded. And in that response lay all his power. His core teaching was simple but revolutionary. There are things you control and things you don't. Stop wasting energy on what you can't control. Focus everything on the one thing you can, your response. And your response decides whether each obstacle weakens or strengthens you. Same events, completely different outcomes. All depends on your interpretation. The thing that changes the game is this: reframe the language in your head. Every time something difficult shows up, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What mental muscle is this trying to train?" That one question reroutes your brain. One leads you to blame, the other leads you to growth. Also, learn to identify the specific skill you're building. Someone constantly annoys you. That's your patience practice. A project doesn't go to plan. That's your adaptability training. You're facing something scary. That's your courage workout. When you name the muscle you're training, the pain of resistance becomes bearable, because now it has a purpose. Elite athletes understand this perfectly. When a marathon runner feels their legs burning at kilometer 35, they don't think, "This is awful. Why am I doing this to myself?" They think, "This is exactly what I needed to feel to be ready for race day." The pain has context. It has meaning, and meaning makes it bearable. Your life works the same way. Every difficult moment is your kilometer 35. You can mentally collapse and quit, or you can recognize, "This is the training I need for what's coming next." And don't get this wrong. You don't need a massive crisis to train. Small resistance counts. A lot. Every time you resist the urge to explode, you're doing a rep. Every time something irritates you and you choose to breathe instead of react, you're doing a rep. Every time you get bad news and allow yourself to feel it without spiraling into drama, that's a rep. Those small reps are what build real mental muscle. Because when the big crisis hits, your mind will already have thousands of reps logged. It will already know it can handle hard things. It won't be the first time. Firefighters train to run into smoke when every instinct tells them to run the other way. Rescue divers train to stay calm underwater while their lungs scream for air. Surgeons train to make precise cuts when they're exhausted. It's all training. So that when the real moment comes, the mind doesn't collapse. It responds. You need to do the same. Don't wait for the crisis to try to be strong. Practice strength in the small things. Choose discomfort from time to time. Not because you're a masochist, but because you're training. Seneca did it constantly. He chose simple food when he could eat banquets. He walked when he could ride in a carriage. He chose difficulty when comfort was available. People thought he was crazy, but he knew something. When he inevitably lost it all, When life hit him hard, it wouldn't be the first time he felt discomfort. It would just be one more rep, and his mind would know how to handle it. Because in the end, the difference between a mind that obeys you in crisis and one that abandons you isn't about having better circumstances. It's about having trained before the crisis came. It's about having built the mental muscle before you urgently needed it. Because once you're in the middle of it, it's too late to start building. So stop avoiding every bit of discomfort. Stop chasing the easy way every time. I'm not saying you should seek out unnecessary suffering. I'm saying that when resistance shows up, and it will, don't treat it like your enemy. See it for what it really is, your most effective trainer, the only one capable of making your mind unbreakable. Because in the end, when you look back, the things that shaped you the most won't be the moments when everything was easy. They'll be the moments when everything got impossibly hard, and you chose not to give up. When your mind wanted to collapse, but you kept it steady. Those are the reps that truly matter, and your mind remembers. So the next time something hard comes, it already knows one fundamental truth. It can count on you. You've trained for this. You're ready. Lesson 13. What you don't face controls you. My friend, not everything you ignore disappears. Sometimes it grows quietly, just like what happened to the man in this story I'm about to tell you. A farmer had a dog that barked non-stop every night at a dark corner of the barn. The farmer, tired of it, would yell at him to shut up, lock him up, scold him, but never stopped to check what was actually there. Over time, he started avoiding that side altogether, walking around it, even stopped storing things there. The dark corner began to dictate how he moved, what he did, and even the decisions he made. One day, that part of the barn collapsed. What had been there all along was a rat infestation, slowly gnawing away at the structure from the inside. The lesson? What you avoid eventually starts directing your life. What you don't face ends up controlling you, without you even noticing. And I'm telling you this from experience. For months, I carried a thorn no one could see. A friend owed me money. Not a huge amount, but just enough that every time I saw him talking about dinners out, shopping, or vacations, something boiled inside me. But I kept quiet, pretended nothing was wrong, told myself it wasn't worth a fight, that I'd bring it up someday. The worst part wasn't the money, it was what was happening inside me. I'd go to bed and lie awake thinking about how to say it. I couldn't focus at work. In conversations, my mind would drift to that unresolved issue. I was there, but not really. I felt like an actor stuck in the same role. Everything looked fine on the outside, but inside there was a storm that wouldn't ease up. One day I listened to a talk by psychologist Julian Gutierrez. He said something that struck me hard. Fear isn't overcome by hiding it. It weakens when you approach it. The brain needs proof that you can handle what you fear. And in that moment it clicked. It wasn't my friend who was controlling me, it was me. It was my silence, my fear of rejection, my urge to avoid discomfort. So I brought it up. Said it plainly, no sugarcoating. His reaction was lukewarm, like he didn't quite understand why it had affected me so much. But that's when I realized it wasn't about his response. It was about mine. I had finally said what had been burning inside. I had broken the cycle that had me stuck. That night I slept better than I had in weeks, because sometimes, my friend, 5 minutes of discomfort are worth more than months of silence. Seneca put it clearly with a quote few people mention, but it sums this all up in one line. If you flee from everything that makes you uncomfortable, you'll spend your life running. His philosophy wasn't about hiding pain, it was about transforming it, using it as a compass. What you're most afraid to face is usually what you most need to look at. And if your mind has been spinning around the same thing for a while, if there's that mental buzz that just won't go away, maybe you don't need more distractions. Maybe you just need to look it in the eye. So next time you catch yourself avoiding a thought, stop. Say it out loud. Name it. Speaking it with your own voice takes away part of the power it holds in your head. Another powerful way to face it is to write it down. No filter, no style. Just you, the page, and the truth. Get it all out. Leave nothing inside. And if you struggle to put it into words, shift the question. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" ask, "What part of this don't I want to see?" Sometimes a different question opens the door you've been avoiding for days, months, or even years. Your mind doesn't need you to silence the pain. It needs you to look it in the eye. Because fear, like shadows, dissolves when you shine the light of truth on it. And if you keep avoiding that dark corner, don't be surprised when it all goes up in flames. Facing things isn't easy, but hiding is the fastest way to live controlled by what you're too scared to face. And you? What truth are you going to shine a light on today? Tell us in the comments which conversation, decision, or uncomfortable truth you're done avoiding. Write it like a declaration. Because putting it into words is the first step toward facing it. Lesson 14. Silence also commands. Have you ever noticed how often you speak just to avoid feeling the emptiness? Or how you reply to something without thinking, simply because you can't stand staying quiet? In a world where everyone wants to have an opinion, justify, attack, or have the last word, staying silent is one of the most powerful ways to show strength. And no, we're not talking about bottling things up or pretending nothing gets to you. We're talking about choosing when your energy is worth more than a response. Picture this. You're at a family dinner. Your brother-in-law, with that smile you know all too well, throws a little jab about your job. Casual, offhand, but it lands. It hits you. You feel your face heat up, your stomach tighten. You think about letting it go, but you can't. This time you tell yourself you're not staying quiet. So you shoot back a witty, sharp line, elegant, but laced with venom. He laughs. Someone else jumps in to defend him. The table gets tense, you play it off like nothing happened. But inside you're at war. You didn't win. You just fed the chaos. That night you can't sleep. You replay every word. Think of better comebacks. Wonder if everyone thought you looked bad. And the next day you're drained, distracted. All because your mind couldn't hold steady. Because you confused reacting with commanding. And my friend, a strong mind doesn't need to shout to be heard. It just needs to stay calm. Epictetus said it clearly centuries ago. Sometimes, the most powerful response is no response at all. Because a strong mind doesn't react to the first thing thrown at it. A strong mind chooses. It filters. It decides. It understands that every time it steps into a pointless argument, it's letting someone else take control of its peace. And listen, if Epictetus could stay silent as a slave, with every reason to scream, you can absolutely skip the showdown with your brother-in-law over a cheap shot. You don't have to be an ancient sage, but it helps not to act like a rooster in a street fight. My friend, don't you see? Silence isn't weakness. Quite the opposite, it makes you stronger. And this isn't impossible to learn. If you want to hear how real people like you and me, have learned to master that impulse and use silence as a powerful weapon, check out the podcast Silencio by Onda Caro. No gurus, no empty quotes, just stories of people who chose to stay quiet when everything told them to explode, and came out stronger for it. You'll see that silence isn't passivity. It's wisdom, self-control, and often the most stoic answer you can give. And you? Are you ready to make silence your best weapon? Start by noticing when you speak just to fill a void. Sometimes you make a joke, a jab, or share something just to avoid the discomfort of silence. But once you notice it, something shifts. You start speaking with intention, not out of impulse. Next, practice responding with pauses. If someone throws a tough comment your way, breathe for 2 seconds before answering. 2 seconds, not to calm down, but to give yourself the chance to choose. That tiny space is where your mind shows if it's your ally or your enemy. And finally, give yourself permission not to respond. Write it down if you have to. Not responding is still a response. Because no, you're not obligated to answer everything, or to always explain yourself, or to open up to someone who isn't willing to understand. Silence also builds your character, and often it protects it. Maybe the most powerful thing about you isn't your voice, or your perfect argument, or your ability to clap back. Maybe what really shakes people is that you don't need to prove anything, that they can say whatever they want, and you keep eating in peace. Because when your mind is calm, the noise outside can't control you. And in that moment, without saying a single word, you've already won. So far, you've seen how a strong mind isn't built overnight. It's trained, it's tested, it's chosen, every day. But be careful, my friend, because it can also become its own enemy. Because sometimes the harder you push, the more you break. And real strength isn't always about gritting your teeth. It's knowing when to let go. Stick with me, because what comes next isn't about pushing harder. It's about learning to release at the right time, and that, I assure you, is also control. Lesson 15. Change what you believe about yourself. How many times have you caught yourself saying things like, "That's just how I am"? You repeat it with such certainty that it feels like an absolute truth. "I'm not good at public speaking. I suck at numbers. I've never been charismatic." The strange thing is, those phrases weren't born with you. They're not written into your DNA. They were built at some point, maybe after a hurtful comment, a failure that hit harder than you expected, or an unfair comparison. And ever since, they've stayed there like outdated software running in your mind, blocking every attempt to move forward. It's like trying to install a new program on an old computer. No matter how many times you try, the system keeps crashing. Not because the program is broken, but because the operating system was never updated. Your beliefs work the same way. You try to start new projects, make decisions, open up to people, but your mind is still running on labels from years ago. And of course, it crashes. Not because you can't, but because you're still obeying old commands. Take Oprah Winfrey. She grew up being told she came from an impossible place, that her destiny was limited by her background. She could have accepted those beliefs as a life sentence. Many people would have. But she chose to change what she believed about herself. In interviews, she says it clearly. What you believe about yourself is what you end up living. And thanks to that inner shift, she built an empire nobody saw coming. What would have happened if she'd stuck with, "I don't fit in"? That one phrase could have shut down her entire story. Chances are something similar has happened to you. Maybe a teacher once told you you weren't good at English, and you took it as an absolute truth. Years later, you're traveling, you know enough vocabulary, but you freeze up. It's not real inability. It's that teacher's voice still running in your mind like a virus. That's the difference between a fact and a belief. The fact is gone, but the belief still rules your present. Stoicism speaks to this power of inner belief too. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." That's the key. It's not what others say, or even what your past failures try to shout at you. It's the story you choose to tell yourself afterward that shapes who you are. If after a mistake you say, "I knew I wasn't good enough," you reinforce the chain. But if you say, "I learned something that'll make me better," you begin turning insecurity into confidence. Here's the thing. Those phrases you repeat to yourself aren't just passing thoughts. They're like roots. Some support you, others tangle you up. So why keep feeding rotten roots that block your growth? If you want to transform insecurity into clarity, you have to pull those roots out and plant new ones. Because yes, beliefs can change. They're not lifelong chains. Let me ask you, what "that's just how I am" phrase keeps playing in your head? Maybe it's "I'm shy," and every time you say it, it justifies your silence. Maybe it's "I'm impatient," and that label gives you an excuse to quit fast. Or "I'm disorganized," and it becomes your way out of trying to improve. Those phrases are like scripts in a play you keep acting out over and over. If you change the script, the story changes too. So, how do you shift all this without falling into magic formula territory? Start by playing with the words you use. That voice that insists, "I can't." Change it to "not yet." It might sound like a small tweak, but it changes everything. It's no longer a wall. It's a half-open door. And trust me, your brain believes it sooner than you think. Also, write down the labels you've been repeating for years as if they were truths. I'm bad with numbers. I freeze up in front of people. I'm a mess in relationships. Write them down, look at them for a second, and then tear them up like old receipts. And while you do, say, "Thanks for your service, but I don't work with you anymore." Humor, too, can be a hammer against insecurity. Here's something else. Chances are you've got a friend who's great at reminding you of what you do well, even when you downplay it. Message them. Ask them what your last win was. You'll be surprised by how clearly others can see what you erase in seconds. It's like having a foggy mirror, and suddenly someone wipes it clean. And there's your real reflection, much clearer than you imagined. Remember this, beliefs are like roots. If the ones you've got don't support you but trap you, pull them out without hesitation. Plant new ones that grow upward, that give you direction, that bring your clarity back. And if you ever doubt yourself, picture Marcus Aurelius ripping out a page from his journal with a useless self-criticism and writing over it, "Today, I choose to be better." Because in the end, if you want to eliminate insecurity from your mind, you have to start by changing what you believe about yourself. Lesson 16. Step off the hamster wheel. Picture this. The alarm goes off, and Daniel, like every morning, reaches out without even opening his eyes, turns it off, and the first thing he does is unlock his phone. It doesn't matter that last night he swore today would be different. Social media, pointless news, messages that could wait. He gets up late, rushes around, makes coffee he doesn't even taste, throws on whatever clothes, and heads out the door. The commute to work? He knows it by heart. He knows exactly where there's always a badly parked car, which traffic light takes forever to turn green, even which person crosses his path almost every day. But if you ask him what he saw during those 20 minutes, he can't remember a thing. His body moves, sure, but his mind is switched off. At work, it's the same story. The same words, the same complaints, the same gestures on repeat. And at the end of the day, drained, he says to himself, "Tomorrow I'll do things differently." Spoiler alert, tomorrow he doesn't. Now let me ask you something. Is your name Daniel? No, right? Then explain to me why I just described your day in such detail. Because, be honest, more than once you've woken up just like that. You've fallen into the same routines and let inertia decide for you. But don't worry, the Stoics faced this same problem centuries ago. They were also surrounded by customs, repetitions, and habits that could trap them without even realizing it. And their solution wasn't to sit around waiting for life to magically change. It was to train the mind not to fall into the autopilot trap. Because here's the dangerous part. Living on autopilot doesn't hurt. There's no alarm that suddenly screams, "Hey, you're wasting your life." Just a quiet repetition that steals your time like an invisible thief. And by the time you finally notice, weeks, months, or even years have passed, and you've just been going in circles. That's why, for Marcus Aurelius, the worst thing wasn't death itself, but wasting your life in distractions, without attention. He reminded himself daily not to live as if he had 1,000 years ahead. Because in autopilot mode, what you lose isn't just a task, it's your most sacred asset, your time. My friend, don't get it twisted. Escaping autopilot doesn't require a massive shakeup. It requires awareness. The Stoics practiced self-observation like a daily workout. Seneca used to review his thoughts every night, like a businessman balancing his books. Not to beat himself up, but to correct his course. And that's your first key to transformation. Spotting your loops before they become chains. Do this exercise right now. Think of one action you repeat every day without questioning it. Maybe it's checking your phone in bed, complaining about traffic, or putting off that one task you know matters. Now ask yourself, what would happen if I did it differently tomorrow? You don't need a master plan, just one small shift. A simple example. If you always start your day rushing around, try waking up 10 minutes earlier and sitting in silence. No screens, just your breath. Another one. If you always delay that call or that project, make it the first thing on your list. Even something as basic as changing your route to work forces your mind to build new connections, and that breaks inertia. Transformation starts small. like a river that bumps into a stone and slowly shifts course, until, over time, it carves out an entirely new path. Every small decision is a stone that can redirect the flow of your life, because if your mind is still running on the same outdated software, your life will keep showing the same screen. No, you don't have to delete everything all at once. You just have to rewrite one line of code each day. And that's the real power of Stoicism. Not chasing instant miracles, but training your mind step by step, until it stops obeying autopilot and starts choosing freely. Today, you have a chance to break one pattern. Pick one, watch it, change it, make it conscious, and tomorrow, do it again. That's how, little by little, you stop being a spectator of a repeated routine and start becoming the author of a different life. 17th lesson. Silence is where your mind finds its voice. Cato the Younger had a habit that his contemporaries found incomprehensible. Every morning before sunrise, he would sit alone in his study. No reading, no writing, no apparent activity. Just sitting in complete silence while Rome slept. His slaves thought he was wasting time. His fellow politicians considered him eccentric. But Cato knew something they didn't. In a city that never shut up, where markets screamed and the Senate argued non-stop, silence was his secret weapon. When the political battles of the day finally arrived, when other senators lost their composure and shouted, Cato held a mental clarity that seemed almost supernatural. He could hear what was truly being said beneath the words. He could see patterns no one else noticed, not because he was smarter, but because his mind had learned to operate in silence. And a mind trained in silence doesn't get dragged around by the noise. But we live surrounded by constant noise. The external noise is obvious. Notifications, traffic, overlapping conversations, background music in every public space. But the internal noise is worse. That endless mental chatter, the never-ending to-do list on repeat, the obsessive analysis of what you said yesterday and what you should say tomorrow. That infinite scroll that keeps you busy but leaves you completely empty. All that noise sells you an illusion that you're alive, that you're doing something, that you're present. But the truth is harsher. You're just running. Running from the one place you might actually find yourself. Pure silence. People are terrified of silence, and it's not hard to understand why. When everything goes quiet, when the distractions stop, the things you've been avoiding finally show up. The unanswered questions, the unprocessed emotions, the problems you've buried under constant activity. Silence doesn't lie. It doesn't let you hide behind productivity or entertainment. It forces you to face what's really going on inside. That's why most people do everything they can to avoid it. There's always something to listen to, something to watch, something to consume. Anything but being alone with their own thoughts. But there's a brutal cost to that avoidance. Your mind never learns to be with you. It always needs something else. It's constantly chasing the next stimulus. And a mind that relies on external stimulation to function is not a mind that obeys you. It's an addicted mind. And addictions don't follow orders. They control you. Seneca practiced silence religiously, not as some spiritual obligation, but as a mental necessity. He spent hours in deliberate silence. He knew that a mind saturated by constant noise is a confused, reactive, and out-of-control mind. He wrote something that hits harder today than ever. Nowhere can man find a quieter retreat than in his own soul. But to reach that retreat, you first have to shut everything else off. All the noise that convinces you that you can't stand being alone with yourself. The Stoics didn't see silence as absence. They saw it as full presence. When Epictetus taught his students, he often asked them to spend time not speaking, not reading, not writing, just observing their own minds. And the students hated it, because in silence, they couldn't hide from their chaotic thoughts. They couldn't pretend they had control while their minds jumped around like wild animals. But the ones who stuck with it discovered something extraordinary. Silence isn't empty, it's space. Space where your mind can finally process what's been building up. Space where the answers you've been chasing finally begin to appear on their own. Space where you can hear the inner voice that the constant noise had silenced. Imagine someone who lives in a house where loud music plays all the time. After years, they don't even hear it anymore. It becomes background. But their mind is still processing it, draining energy to filter it out. When they finally turn the music off, the silence is deafening. Uncomfortable, almost painful. But after a few minutes, something shifts. They can hear their own breathing, the subtle sounds that were always there, but drowned out. Their mind can finally rest. That's how your life works. You've normalized constant noise to the point that silence feels unnatural, but your mind is exhausted from endlessly filtering stimulation. And when you give it permission to be silent, something fundamental shifts. Not instantly, not magically, but it shifts. Incorporating silence into modern life seems impossible. Everything conspires against it. Notifications designed to be addictive, work that never ends, social expectations to always be available. And underneath all of that, your own fear of what you might find if you sit still for 5 minutes. But the entry point is deceptively simple. 5 minutes, that's all. 5 minutes with no screens, no music, no headphones, no podcast in the background. Just you, sitting somewhere, breathing. The first time you try it, it'll be brutally uncomfortable. Your mind will fight hard. It'll come up with 1,000 urgent reasons why you need to check your phone. It'll jump from thought to thought, desperate for something to latch onto. Let it. The Stoics didn't try to empty the mind like modern apps teach. They let thoughts come. Watch them pass like clouds, without judgment, without grabbing onto any, just observing them appear and disappear. Routine activities are perfect moments to practice silence. Tomorrow, when you shower, just shower. Feel the water on your skin, the temperature, the sensation. Don't plan your day while you're shampooing. Don't mentally rehearse conversations. Don't solve problems. Just be there, fully present. When you walk somewhere, walk without anything in your ears. No motivational playlist, no calls. Just your steps and the world around you. The first 30 minutes after you wake up are sacred ground. Protect them like a Stoic would protect their mind. Don't check your phone. Don't open social media. Don't consume news. Just be with yourself. It could be with a coffee, looking out the window. It could be journaling freely. It could be sitting and breathing. But guard that space like your sanity depends on it, because it does. The modern world endlessly sells you the idea that you need to be busy all the time. That silence is a waste. That if you're not consuming or producing, you're wasting your life. It's a lie, one designed to keep you exhausted and dependent. Silence isn't emptiness, it's foundation. It's where your mind regains its natural clarity. A mind that never stops is a mind on the verge of collapse. It doesn't obey because it can't. It's too busy reacting to the next thing, defending against the next input, processing non-stop, stuck in survival mode. But a mind that regularly enters silence works differently. It can think clearly, make conscious choices instead of reactive ones, be present in its own life instead of running on autopilot. Cato the Younger faced brutal moments in his life, political losses, betrayal, the fall of the republic he loved. But he never lost his clarity of mind. He never let external chaos become internal chaos. Not because he was special, but because he spent years training his mind in silence. And when the storms came, his mind knew exactly how to respond. With calm, with clarity, with total obedience to his will. Give your mind the same training. Not as some mystical ritual that requires incense and special poses, but as a practical need like food or sleep. Your mind needs silence, desperately. If you keep denying it, it will eventually break in ways you can't predict. But if you start giving it silence, even in microscopic doses, you'll notice the shift. More clarity when you need to decide. More calm when chaos hits. More control over your reactions. And finally, a mind that listens to you. Because you took the time to listen to it first. And hey, Since it's just you and me here, I'm genuinely curious. When was the last time you were truly in silence? No screens, no noise, just nothing. If you feel like sharing, write it below. And if it's been ages since it happened, just type, "I'm going to create my silence." That way, we walk this path together. Lesson number 18. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Yes, my friend, you heard that right. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And no, I didn't make that up. Marcus Aurelius wrote it nearly 2,000 years ago. You've probably heard it before because it's still quoted everywhere. But this isn't cheap poetry or feel-good philosophy. It's pure survival. Because your thoughts don't just stay in your head. They leak into your mood, your decisions, and even the direction your life takes. Think of it like this. Every thought is a pair of glasses. If you put on dark lenses, everything looks gloomy. If they're scratched, everything looks distorted. But if you wear clear, clean lenses, the exact same landscape suddenly appears different. The reality doesn't change. The filter you see it through does. Apply this to something simple. The alarm goes off on a Monday, and the first thing you think is, what a terrible day this is going to be. From that moment on, you've already polluted your day. You head to work with a sour face. Every little inconvenience feels like a catastrophe. And by the end of the day, you confirm your prophecy. See? Mondays are the worst. But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with Mondays. What ruins your day isn't the date on the calendar. It's the tone you gave it from minute one. The Stoics trained exactly this skill, choosing the color of their thoughts. They didn't expect life to be easy, but they didn't surrender to misery in advance either. Epictetus made it clear, what matters is not what happens, but how you interpret it. That's why they practiced guarding their mind as carefully as a watchman guards the city gates. They knew that if toxic thoughts slipped in, everything else would end up poisoned. Now imagine Marcus Aurelius in the middle of battle. Arrows flying, soldiers shouting, chaos all around. Do you think he allowed himself to think, "This is a disaster, we're going to lose"? Of course not. A leader with that mindset would be defeated before the first sword is even drawn. Instead, he reminded himself that the key was to keep his mind focused and steady. While others drowned in fear, he repeated thoughts that anchored him in calm. That's where the difference was. The same battlefield, but a different filter. So now the obvious question is, what lens are you wearing each day? Because whether you notice it or not, your thoughts become instructions for your brain. If you keep saying something will go wrong, your mind starts searching for proof. But if you decide you can handle it, your brain kicks into gear to find solutions. It's like giving an explorer two different maps, one full of dead ends, the other full of open roads. Which one do you think will get him further? The good news is, this is something you can train. Start with awareness. Whenever a negative thought pops up, don't accept it as automatic truth. Stop and ask, is this helping me or hurting me? That pause alone is already breaking the spell. Then, flip it. If you tend to think, I'm going to make a fool of myself, change the scene. Look at yourself in the mirror. Make eye contact and remember a moment when you accomplished something that once seemed impossible. Take a deep breath, straighten your back and say, I've faced challenges before. I can do it again. That physical shift reinforces the thought. It's not lying to yourself. It's reminding your brain that you have proof of your strength. And if you want to go even further, try the as-if method. Act as if you're already the person you want to be. Speak with the confidence you want to feel. Walk with the calm you want to project. And here's the thing. Your mind starts to believe it. Just like when you smile even if you don't feel like it, and slowly your mood lifts. Body and mind reflect and reinforce each other. Thoughts are seeds. Some are fear, some are courage. What you water will grow, and your life will be the garden that grows from those seeds. You can't stop negative thoughts from showing up, but you can choose which ones to feed. So the next time you catch yourself saying, "What a horrible day," remember, That phrase is the first step down a path you don't have to take. Change the thought, even if at first you don't fully believe it, because with practice your brain will learn to walk the new path. And before you know it, you'll realize your thoughts don't just color your life, they transform it. Lesson 19. Your biggest rival sleeps with you. Imagine living with someone who never leaves. Someone who's in your room the second you open your eyes. Sometimes they help you. They make you breakfast, remind you that you've got important things to do. But then there are days when, the moment your alarm goes off, they get to it first, shut it off, and pull the blanket back over you. They tell you you're tired, that it's no big deal if you skip today. They pull the blinds so you don't see the sunlight. And they do it so gently, so logically that you even thank them. What if I told you that roommate isn't someone else? It's your own mind. And no, you can't move out of it, my friend. But you can train it to live with you without sabotaging you. The problem is you don't realize that voice is dragging you down until you've been stuck for weeks. It gives you excuses with the skill of a seasoned lawyer. You don't have time. You're not ready. You're not going to get very far anyway. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and that's why it works. You think it's you, but it's not. It's a version of you that learned to be afraid, to procrastinate, to hide. Here's an example, and I say this clearly because I know you've lived it. You've decided to start going to the gym. You've got your workout clothes on. You're ready. You've even hyped yourself up with music in your headphones. But right before you leave, that little voice shows up. It's cloudy, it might rain, better go tomorrow. You didn't eat that bad today, it's not that urgent. And the worst part isn't that you say it. The worst part is that it sounds reasonable. It sounds smart. Because the mind that holds you back doesn't come with chains. It comes with logic, with justifications that feel comfortable, but slowly pull you under. And if all this sounds familiar, if you felt that voice draining your motivation, convincing you to stay still, making you doubt yourself just when you were about to begin, then that's exactly when you need to think like Epictetus. Yes, the same philosopher who lived as a slave and still never let anyone break him from within. Because Epictetus was clear, even if he couldn't control what happened around him, he could govern what happened inside his mind. He made it clear with a phrase you should have tattooed on your forehead every time your mind tries to sabotage you. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But no, this isn't just ancient philosophy. Modern science backs it up too. Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist at Stanford, puts it plainly. Many of our impulses and automatic habits don't come from a lack of willpower, but from a poorly trained reward system. In other words, it's not that you're weak. It's that your brain has gotten used to chasing the immediate, the easy, the thing that gives you a quick hit of relief, even if it wrecks you in the long run. So here's a direct question, and I want you to really think about it. Are you letting your mind build you or break you? Because that's the real root of everything you're living. Your mind can either be the engine that drives you forward or the weight that drowns you. How do you get it to play on your team? First, start your day by writing down a single intention. Nothing huge, something real and concrete. Today I move, even if I'm tired. Today I listen more than I speak. Just one sentence. That already focuses your mind on something you can actually control. Second, give that sabotaging voice a name. Don't overthink it. Call it whatever you want. The annoying brother-in-law, the drama queen, the failure coach. By giving it a name, you separate it from yourself. You see it as a character, not your identity. Third, respond to it with action. If your mind says you can't, don't argue. Get up and do 10 push-ups. Go walk for 10 minutes. Do one small task. The body doesn't need to argue with the mind. It corrects it in silence. Because in the end, that's the key. Your mind can be your worst saboteur or your best ally, and you're the one who decides. Every time you choose not to listen, every time you take action despite the doubt, you're making a vital decision. Because if you're not the one in charge of your mind, someone else will be. And believe me, that someone doesn't always want to see you win. Lesson 20. The strength that shows up when you don't feel like it. Tell me the truth, my friend. How many times have you waited to feel motivated before starting something, and that motivation never came? It's like waiting at a train station for a train that was canceled hours ago. You can sit there your whole life, but that train's not coming. The Stoics never trusted motivation. They understood that moods are unreliable, burning hot today, gone tomorrow. Seneca said it plainly. The days that truly count are the ones where you do the right thing even when you don't feel like it. That was his measure of greatness. Not the bursts of inspiration, but the quiet, steady consistency. Picture Seneca after a long, exhausting day, with 1,000 things on his mind. He could have told himself, I don't feel like writing today, I'll do it tomorrow. And maybe no one would have noticed. But he knew that discipline, not motivation, is what shapes character. So he sat down, reflected, wrote, and those repetitions, stacked day after day, turned him into the figure we still remember. The problem with waiting for motivation is that your life becomes a boat adrift. You go wherever the wind blows with no real direction. One day you're fired up and take 10 steps forward. The next you lose steam and fall back 20. And in the end, it feels like you're getting nowhere. You've probably lived it. You decide to start working out. At first you're pumped, but as soon as the fatigue hits, you say, I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into a week, and before you know it, the cycle has repeated so many times that your confidence starts to wear down. The Stoics offered an antidote, action as your guiding principle. Epictetus taught that the only thing you truly control is what you choose to do. Your desire, your mood, your emotions, those come and go. But your actions leave a mark. That's why, if you want to change your mind and your life, you can't wait for motivation to knock on your door. Picture a common scene. It's late. You have a personal project you know you should be working on. But instead of sitting down to do it, your mind kicks in with excuses. I'm tired, I've earned a break. Tomorrow will be better. What would a Stoic do in that moment? He wouldn't sit and bargain with laziness. He'd take a step, no matter how small. Write one line. Review a single paragraph. Move forward for 5 minutes. It doesn't matter how little. What matters is the message you send to your mind. I'm in charge here, not my feelings. And the curious thing is, once you start, the weight lightens. It's like trying to push a car that's stuck. At first it's incredibly hard, but once you get it moving even a little, everything gets easier. Discipline works the same way. You just need that first nudge, however small, and then momentum builds. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning. In his meditations, he wrote that he shouldn't complain about getting up early, because he wasn't born for comfort. He was born to act. He reminded himself, did you come into the world to lie under warm blankets, or to do your duty? That question was his inner alarm clock. He wasn't looking for motivation. He was looking for purpose. And that's exactly what you should train. The ability to act even when you don't want to. Think about the small routines you do every day without questioning. You don't need motivation to shower or brush your teeth. You do it because you know it's time. Now apply that same mindset to the things you actually want to build in your life. Don't wait for inspiration to write, to train, to push your project forward. Do it as part of your responsibility, to yourself. That's where real strength lies, in getting up and doing it anyway. Motivation is a luxury. It shows up when it feels like it. Discipline is the only force you can count on. And every time you show up without wanting to, you strengthen an invisible muscle that makes you stronger in everything else. So the next time your mind tries to convince you, not today, smile, and do it anyway. Because in that moment, even if no one sees it, you're winning the most important battle of all, the battle of mastering yourself. Lesson 21. Focus only on what's in your control. Picture this. You've been preparing for a job interview for weeks. You practiced in front of the mirror, searched for questions online, Even tried on your outfit multiple times just to feel confident. The day comes, you do well, you smile, you say everything you had rehearsed, you did what was in your hands. And yet, the call never comes. Days go by, and your mind starts attacking you. I should have answered differently. They probably saw how nervous I was. I'm just not good enough. That spiral traps you. You stop sending out resumes, you avoid new interviews, and insecurity grows like a shadow that gets bigger each day. And the strange thing? The problem is no longer the interview. It's your fight against something that was never under your control. It's like being a gardener who, instead of watering his plants, becomes obsessed with making it rain. He looks at the sky every day, hoping the clouds will arrange themselves just right. He burns out, gets frustrated, and forgets the one thing that was actually his to do. Grab the watering can and soak the soil. That's how we often live, trying to control the uncontrollable. And when you pour your energy into that lost battle, insecurity explodes. Now think of an inspiring moment. During the 2008 Olympics, Michael Phelps was swimming in a final when his goggles filled with water. Picture that scene. A packed stadium, millions watching on TV, the pressure of a lifetime, and he's blind in the pool. It would have been easy to panic, but instead of fighting what he couldn't change, he focused on what was in his control, counting strokes just like he'd practiced over and over in training. The result? Olympic gold and a world record. That's the power of focusing on what's in your hands. It doesn't make challenges disappear, but it turns insecurity into real confidence. Epictetus said it clearly. Some things are up to us, and some are not. That's not resignation. It's a compass. It's a reminder that you don't have to mortgage your peace on land that never belonged to you. And that kind of clarity is what separates someone who drowns in insecurity from someone who moves forward with calm. Ask yourself this the next time insecurity tightens its grip. Does this depend on me or not? Because, my friend, if the answer is no, then all you're doing by obsessing over it is feeding a fire that would go out on its own if you just stop blowing on it. There's something that works incredibly well, and it's super simple. Write it down. Make a list of what's worrying you today. Divide it into 2 columns, what depends on you and what doesn't. You'll realize that half of what's draining your energy was never in your hands. Keep the first column, and the second? Burn it if you want. It's just symbolic, but it's surprisingly freeing. Another useful habit. Repeat a phrase from Epictetus that I love. I did what was in my hands. The rest belongs to the world. Every time you catch yourself obsessing over an outcome, release it with those words. Because once you've done your part, what happens next belongs to a space that was never yours to begin with. And when your mind fills up with thoughts about all the things that could go wrong, practice what I call micro-control. Don't try to swallow the whole mountain. Just take one small step that depends on you right now. Write a paragraph, send an email, make a call. Small actions within your control that restore your calm and bring clarity. That way, instead of being frozen by what you can't control, you move forward with real steps that do build your confidence. Remember what Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it's in your power, do it. If it's not, accept it." That line changes everything. Because insecurity fades when you stop fighting ghosts and choose to live inside the boundary of what's truly yours to manage. That's where noise turns into clarity, and doubt into confidence. Now tell me, have you ever obsessed over something that wasn't in your hands and ended up completely drained? Share it in the comments. I want to hear your story because that's what this community is about. Sharing experiences, learning together, and reminding each other we're not alone on this path. Lesson 22. Your attention is your most valuable currency. Spend it wisely. There's one thing most people don't understand about their own mind. It doesn't lose control because you've got problems, or because you're stressed, or because you lack discipline. It loses control for something much simpler and far more dangerous. Your attention runs wild. You want to do one thing, but your attention wanders. You try to focus, but your attention drifts. You need to move forward, but your attention gets stuck on things you didn't even choose. And when your attention goes wherever it wants, your mind follows like an unleashed dog. That's why, if you don't master your attention, you have zero chance of mastering your mind. Sometimes we think the mind is some kind of unpredictable monster that shows up whenever it wants and ruins everything. But in reality, it's more like a skittish horse. If it hears a noise, it turns. If it sees a shadow, it stops. If it smells something different, it gets distracted. And you can stand there trying to convince it with kind words. But if you're not holding the reins, it'll chase after anything louder than your intention. And that's what's happening to you day after day. You're not losing to laziness or fear or lack of motivation. You're losing to the noise. The Stoics understood this in a brutally clear way. They didn't talk about managing your time better. They talked about ruling over your attention like it was a territory. They said a scattered mind is a kingdom without a king. A city where anyone can enter, anyone can rule, and anyone can decide. That's exactly how it feels when you've spent months feeling stuck. A lot of activity, a lot of noise, a lot of movement, but no direction. Because where your attention is, that's where your day goes. And where your day goes, that's where your life goes. Think about this. How many times have you ended the day exhausted without having done anything truly important? Not because you're lazy, not because you procrastinated. You're exhausted because your attention has been jumping from thought to thought like they were hot coals. Each one burns a little. None of them builds anything. And by the end of the day, you can't even tell where your energy went. To help you understand the difference between making progress and just reacting, let me tell you something that happened to me a few weeks ago. I was at the gym, training with full focus, listening to my breath and staying locked into what I had to do. Everything was going fine, but in a nearby room I overheard two people talking about something that, by coincidence, reminded me of a situation I went through some time ago. Nothing serious, nothing dramatic, just a small thing. But my attention, which in theory was focused on my reps, jumped straight to that random conversation. It was like my mind suddenly said, "Oh look, a door to that memory we haven't finished processing." And within seconds I stopped training and dove back into something that doesn't even exist anymore. I didn't even notice the shift. I just realized my body was in the gym, but my head was off somewhere, arguing in an old scene that had no use at all in that moment. When I got home, I thought, how many times has this happened without me even noticing? And the answer was obvious, too many. That's when something clicked. The mind doesn't disobey because it's rebellious. It disobeys because your attention opens the door. If your attention latches onto a conversation, the mind follows. If your attention gets stuck in a memory, the mind follows. If your attention fixates on a worry, the mind follows. It always follows. Always. Epictetus explained it from another angle. You're not affected by what happens. You're affected by how you interpret it. And those interpretations always come from where your attention is. If your attention locks onto a problem, your mind creates anxiety. If your attention locks onto an insult, your mind creates anger. If your attention locks onto a mistake, your mind creates guilt. The mind does what you point it to, even if you're pointing without realizing it. And this brings us to a tough truth. Most people don't direct their attention. They just follow it. As if reacting to everything were normal. As if not replying instantly were rude. As if not having an opinion on everything meant you didn't care. We live as if our attention were a suggestion box. Whatever comes in, comes in. But your life is too valuable to be led by whatever shouts the loudest. Marcus Aurelius had a very visual way of putting it. He said the mind should be like a rock, firm, unmoved, even when the waves crash against it. But you can't be a rock if your attention jumps at the first noise. You have to train that stability. Not to become cold or distant, but to be the one who controls your reactions. This is where a lot of people get it wrong. They think controlling attention means not getting distracted. But it's not about that. It's about choosing where to look. It's about deciding what deserves to enter your mind. It's about understanding that your attention is your gatekeeper. If your gatekeeper lets anything in, don't be surprised when your mind is overrun. One thing that really helps is creating an entry filter. It's not a technique, it's a mindset. Ask yourself every time you feel something pulling you in, does this deserve my next 10 minutes? Not an hour, not an afternoon, just 10 minutes. It's amazing how that question can snap you back, because most of the time, you realize you were about to give 10 or 10 hours to something you don't even care about. Another powerful trick is to redirect your attention to the body. The Stoics were big believers in returning to the physical present, breathing, observing, noticing where you are, because your mind can't be in two places at once. It can't be imagining future disasters if you force it to feel your breath now. It can't be overanalyzing everything if you bring it, deliberately, to one specific point. This isn't cheap spirituality. This is basic neuroscience. The attention you place in your body breaks mental loops. And if you want to go even further, practice something very few people do: the conscious return. It's simple. Every time you notice your mind drifting, don't get mad, don't blame yourself. Don't say, "Ugh, I got distracted again." Just tell yourself internally, return. That's it. That word is like a rope you pull to bring the runaway horse back. Every time you return, you build obedience. Every time you return, you strengthen the attention muscle. Every time you return, you become a little more in control of your mind. But there's something even deeper. Learning to tell the difference between what captures your attention and what deserves your attention. Not the same thing. Social media captures. Other people's drama captures. Negative thoughts capture. Fear captures. But what builds you? That rarely captures. What truly matters? It doesn't shout. What makes you grow usually arrives in silence. That's why attention needs training. Because the loud stuff isn't what matters, and what matters is never loud. The Stoics knew life could be taken from them in an instant. That's why they were so obsessive about not wasting their minds on nonsense. Seneca said life isn't short, we just use it badly. But if you read between the lines, what he's really saying is, we use our attention badly, and that's why life feels short. And if you truly want your mind to start obeying you, there's one key thing you have to do. Give it clear direction every day. The mind works better when it knows where it's going. If you don't choose, anything that crosses your path will choose for you. You can't imagine how much energy you'd save if, first thing in the morning, you chose, consciously, what deserves your attention today. Just 3 things, 3 lighthouses, 3 directions, nothing more. Because something magical happens when you do that. Attention starts filtering on its own. What doesn't align with your priorities loses strength. What does align starts getting more light. And when your attention becomes more selective, your mind learns to obey. It learns that not everything is important. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everything needs space. My friend, the mind is not the enemy. It's a powerful tool, but it needs you to hold the reins. Mental obedience isn't built with force, it's built with direction. And direction starts with attention. Decide what you shine a light on. Decide what stays in the dark. Decide what comes in and what doesn't. Because in the end, wherever your attention goes, that's where you go. And if you're not the one choosing where you go, then everything that shouts louder than your purpose will choose for you. Your attention is your act of sovereignty. When you control it, your mind has no choice but to follow. And that's the first real step toward a life where you give the orders, and your mind obeys. Lesson 23. Your peace is worth more than your ego. Picture this. You're at work. Everything's going fine until, right in the middle of a meeting, you finally share that idea you've been working on for days. And just then, that colleague who always wants the spotlight cuts you off to correct you. And he doesn't do it gently, not at all. He makes sure everyone hears it, says it with a smug tone, even flashes a little grin while he's at it. He puts you on the spot. You feel that heat rising up your neck, the tightness in your chest, your hands clenching under the table. You start running through all the things you could say to him. Who does he think he is? Next time, you'll call out all his mistakes. You won't stay quiet. And that's the trap, because if you give in to that voice, you're not defending your dignity. You're following your ego. And your ego, my friend, isn't trying to help you win. It wants you to react. It wants drama. It wants noise. What it doesn't want is for you to think. But if in that moment you choose to stay silent, to breathe, to not take the bait, you're not doing it out of weakness. You're doing it out of wisdom. Who knows? Maybe your boss is watching. Maybe they see that you don't feed into the drama, that you don't get dragged down by impulses. And maybe that's what moves you closer to a promotion. Or even more important, maybe you get home with a calm mind, not replaying the scene over and over all night. Because sometimes success starts in that invisible moment when you choose peace over pride. And that right there, is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." Because anyone can lash out from ego, but someone truly strong chooses not to become like the person who hurt them. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, in the middle of a battle, getting sidetracked by a personal insult, and redirecting his entire army because an enemy disrespected him. Ridiculous, right? But that's exactly what we do every day when we lose our cool over small stuff. When we let a comment, a critique, or a look throw off our entire state of mind. As Najwa Zebian, author of Welcome Home, puts it, sometimes letting it go is the most powerful way to heal. The people who radiate the most peace don't do it because everything goes their way. It's because they've stopped responding to every hit. They've learned not everything deserves a reaction, and that choosing silence is sometimes the most powerful way to protect your energy. Want to keep your mind in control in those moments? Try this. When you feel that surge of anger, that instant urge to snap back, take a deep breath and start counting backwards from 10. 10, 9, 8, quietly. This small shift tricks your brain. It forces it to focus on something logical, numerical, ordered. It's like pulling the emergency brake on a downhill slope. It's not just a distraction. It actually interrupts the automatic reaction. And when you do that, it's no longer you responding with anger. It's your mind winning its first battle. Then ask yourself one brutally honest question. Will responding actually change anything? Will saying what you're thinking fix the problem? Or just make you feel like you stood your ground? Because sometimes we confuse strength with needing to prove it all the time. And no, my friend, that's not strength. That's a wounded ego. But if the anger's still there, there's an even more effective trick. Remove yourself physically. Go to the bathroom, take a walk around the block, climb the stairs if you have to. And no, this isn't about always staying silent or suppressing your feelings. It's about choosing when and how to act so your mind doesn't become a battlefield every time someone pokes your pride. Because the more you master that reaction, the more you own yourself. And that inner peace, that quiet strength, it's the foundation of a life that's stable, strong, and brave. Lesson 24. The inner dialogue that's tearing you apart every day. In 1954, a doctor named Roger Bannister did something everyone said was impossible. He ran a mile in under 4 minutes. But the most fascinating part wasn't that he did it. It's what happened afterward. In the 12 months that followed, another 37 runners also broke that barrier. Did their bodies suddenly change? No. What changed was what they were telling themselves about what was possible. Because for years, every runner had been saying, "It can't be done," and their bodies obeyed, until one person proved otherwise. Then the inner conversation shifted, and with it, the results. That's the part nobody tells you about mastering the mind. It's not just about what you do. It's about what you tell yourself while you do it. Because there's a voice in your head that's been talking for years. And depending on what that voice says, your mind either obeys you or sabotages you. Most people don't even realize that voice is there. It runs on autopilot, like background radio that never gets turned off. It's 11 at night. You're lying in bed, and the review starts. Not a neutral recap of the day, the critical version, the internal courtroom. Why did you say that in the meeting? You sounded like an idiot. Why didn't you get more done today? You're so lazy. Look at everyone else progressing, improving, and then you just lying here. Every line is a hit, but because it comes from you, you accept it. You normalize it. You even start believing it's necessary, that it keeps you alert, that it pushes you to improve. But it doesn't push you. It crushes you. Because a mind that lives under constant attack doesn't get stronger. It gets defensive. And when you're always in defense mode, there's no room to create, no room to move forward, no room to obey, only room to survive. And a mind that's only surviving is not a mind that serves you. Seneca saw this in Rome. He saw powerful men destroy themselves with their own internal dialogue. And he wrote something that sounds harsh, but is absolutely true. It's not because things are difficult that we don't dare. It's because we don't dare that things are difficult. And that daring begins with how you talk to yourself. If your inner voice constantly tells you that you can't, you won't. Not because it's true, but because you've given that voice all the power. There's a study from the University of Michigan that measured this precisely. They asked a group of people to perform tasks under pressure, but half the group was told to speak to themselves in the third person, using their own name. Instead of thinking, "I'm nervous, I'm going to mess up," they'd think, "John, you've done this before, you can handle it." And the results were dramatic. The third-person group showed less anxiety, better performance, and more emotional control. Why? Because they created distance between themselves and their negative thoughts. Those thoughts weren't absolute truths anymore. They were just thoughts. And thoughts can be questioned. But most people don't question. They accept. You're walking down the street and you trip. Before anyone even says a word, your inner voice fires off. "What a clumsy idiot." You show up 5 minutes late. While you're apologizing, inside you're already tearing yourself down. Same old story. You're never on time. You try something new and fail on the first try. And here comes the verdict. Why do you even try? You're not cut out for this. And the worst part? If someone else talked to you like that, you'd cut them out of your life instantly. But because the voice is yours, you tolerate it. You carry it. And eventually, it becomes your reality. Because the brain doesn't distinguish between an external insult and an internal one. It processes both as threats. And when you constantly feel threatened, your body reacts. It releases cortisol, anxiety goes up, mental clarity goes down. And all of that, not because something bad is happening outside, but because you're attacking yourself on the inside. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in the world. He had armies, wealth, absolute power. And yet, in his private writings, he admitted that the hardest battle wasn't against outside enemies. It was against his own thoughts. He spent years training for that battle, refusing to let his mind become his enemy. Because he understood something fundamental. If you are your own enemy, no army on earth can save you. My friend, are you ready to change that internal dialogue that's been tearing you down for years? The first thing you need to understand is this. That voice is not you. It's just a voice you picked up somewhere, probably from someone else, and now you repeat it without even questioning it. But you can question it. And once you do, something shifts. There's a trick that works better than any complex technique. The next time your mood suddenly drops, stop and ask yourself, out loud or silently, what did I just say to myself? Because 90% of the time, your bad mood doesn't come from what happened. It comes from what you told yourself about what happened. And when you name it, when you bring it into the light, it loses power. It's no longer an untouchable truth. It's just a thought. And thoughts can be changed. Another thing that changes everything, stop demanding fake optimism from yourself. This isn't about lying. It's not about saying everything's fine when it's clearly not. It's about being fair with yourself. If something didn't go well, instead of saying, "I'm a total failure," you can say, "This didn't work this time, but I get another shot." It's subtle, but it shifts the direction. One shuts you down, the other moves you forward. And when that mental loop is really stuck, when you feel trapped in a spiral of negative thoughts, there's one thing that cuts through better than any mental strategy: physical movement. Get up, change spaces, wash something, stretch, do 10 squats, whatever. Because sometimes the mind can't solve what the body needs to release. Movement breaks the pattern. It tells your brain, "This is different. We're not stuck. We can change." Neuroscience confirms it. When you move your body, you change your brain chemistry. Cortisol drops, endorphins rise, your mind clears. That's why so many people have their best ideas while walking or showering. It's not coincidence, it's biology. A moving body frees the mind from the loop. Ethan Kross, one of the leading psychologists studying inner dialogue, discovered something else. People who talk to themselves in second or third person. "You can handle this," or "Maria, you've gotten through worse." Activate areas of the brain linked to cognitive control. It's as if changing the pronoun switches on your rational brain instead of your emotional one. And from that place, you think better, decide better, act better. Look, my friend, the most important voice you'll ever hear is your own. It's with you all the time, when you wake up, when you work, when you fail, when you succeed. And that voice decides whether your mind obeys you or pulls you down, whether it builds you or breaks you. And the good news, you decide what that voice says. It won't change on its own, but it can change if you decide to change it. So start today, pay attention to what you tell yourself. Ask if it's really true, or just fear disguised as realism. Shift the tone. You don't need to become your own cheerleader. You just need to be fair. And when you do that, when you start talking to yourself the way you talk to someone you respect, your mind will respond differently. It'll stop defending itself. It'll start following you, because finally, you stopped being its enemy and became its ally. My friend, now I'd love to hear from you. We're all learning to have a better relationship with our own minds, so tell me in the comments, what's one phrase you want to start changing in your inner dialogue? What voice do you want to silence? And which one do you want to turn up? And if today you just feel like writing something simple, put this: "From today on, my mind is starting to be on my side." Lesson number 25. Learn to let go without giving up. Have you ever felt like the harder you try, the less you achieve? Like the more you force your mind, the more it shuts down. As if your head becomes a cage where everything bounces around, except a way out. You've spent days trying to make progress on that personal project, that book you started writing, that business idea that still hasn't come together, that goal you swore you'd reach this month. You open your laptop, grab a coffee, tell yourself, "Today's the day." But nothing. You push, repeat, force it, and when the frustration chokes you, you slam everything shut and think maybe you're just not cut out for this. But my friend, maybe the problem isn't that you're failing. Maybe you're just ignoring what your mind has been begging you for. To stop. A strong mind isn't the one that pushes the hardest. It's the one that knows when to pause before it breaks. Because your mind is the root of everything. It's what decides whether today you move forward or beat yourself up for not doing everything perfectly. And that decision doesn't come from shouting. It comes in silence. Sometimes what you need isn't to give up. It's to reset. Give yourself a free afternoon, not to run away, but to breathe. Seneca said it with brutal clarity. Even the strongest tree cannot withstand if it refuses to bend with the wind. And you, how many times have you confused rigidity with strength? Imagine you're gripping a rope that's pulling with all its might from the other side. You hold on, grit your teeth, hang on tight, but the rope is already cutting into your hands. Is that strength? No, that's wear and tear. Because true strength, the kind that carries you far, is knowing when to let go before it starts hurting you. And no, letting go doesn't mean giving up on your goals. It means taking care of yourself so you can actually reach them. So ask yourself this: what am I forcing today that really needs a pause? Because if you can identify it, you can do something about it. For example, instead of forcing yourself to keep going when you can't even think straight, go for a walk with no destination. No music, no distractions. Let your mind breathe. Sometimes the best ideas don't show up at your desk. They show up between steps when you've stopped chasing them. You can even do something more radical. Give yourself a full day without being productive. Yes, you heard that right. A day just to exist. Read for fun, cook without rushing, sleep without an alarm. The mind needs boredom too, to recharge. And no, it's not a waste of time, it's an investment. And if you're one of those people who can't stop without feeling guilty, try this shift. Stop asking, "Why am I slowing down?" and start asking, "Why do I feel the need to keep going at this pace?" That small change leads you to a truth you might have been avoiding. That often we keep pushing because we're afraid of what we might find if we stop. Your mind, my friend, isn't an engine you can force endlessly. It's your travel companion. And if you don't take care of it, it'll fail you right when you need it most. That's why this matters so much. Stopping is also moving forward. Letting go is also building. Because a mind that allows itself to rest is a mind that's preparing to go further. And in the end, that's the key to everything. Your mind can be the weight that drags you down or the engine that drives you toward your dreams. And that choice is made every day, even when you choose to pause. Because yes, success takes effort, but it also takes silence, stillness, and sometimes a gentle, "not today," so that tomorrow you come back stronger than ever. Lesson 26. Rewrite the map of your mind. Imagine your brain as a city. Every thought opens a path, every emotion draws a street, every habit builds an entire neighborhood. If you always react with anger, you're paving a highway straight to rage. If you keep putting off what matters, you're building a dark alley that traps you. And the more you use those routes, the stronger they become. But here's the fascinating part. That city is never finished. You can always open new roads and shut down the ones that no longer serve you. What scientists now call neuroplasticity, the Stoics were already practicing centuries ago. Seneca would say it with conviction: as long as we live, we learn. He saw the mind as a worksite in constant progress. That's why he reviewed his actions every night, like someone checking a blueprint. Marcus Aurelius did the same in his meditations. Every reminder was a brick, reinforcing a new path. And Epictetus taught his students to use a simple question: does this depend on me? Like a hammer to knock down useless walls in the mind. Now put yourself in the picture. Imagine you think, "I'm terrible at public speaking." Just the thought of standing in front of people makes you sweat. Your voice cracks in your head before you even speak, and you can already hear yourself stumbling over your words. Right there, your brain starts building a fast road to fear. The more you repeat it, the more real it feels. You say, "I'm just shy. I'm not good at this." And without realizing it, you've developed an entire neighborhood in your mind. And all that exists there is insecurity. But no, you weren't born shy. What happened is you practiced that route so many times, it now feels like the only one. And here's the good news: you can build a new one. Start with something as simple as changing your words. Instead of saying, "This is how I am," say, "This is how I feel right now." That small shift creates a new detour on your mental map. You stop seeing it as your final destination and start recognizing it as a temporary stop. Then comes the training. Want to speak in public with more confidence? Do it step by step. Next time you have to introduce yourself in a meeting, start with one line that gives you confidence. Something prepared, not improvised in a panic. Try telling a simple story to friends as if it were a rehearsal. Or challenge yourself to read out loud when there are people at home. Every time you do it, your brain lays down a new path toward confidence. At first, it'll be a narrow trail, but if you keep walking it, it will turn into a highway as solid as the one that used to lead to fear. The Stoics knew nothing changes overnight. Just like muscles need repetition, The mind needs constant practice. Seneca understood this when he said, "Improvement is a daily task." He didn't beat himself up over his mistakes, but he didn't ignore them either. He analyzed them, learned from them, and slowly shaped his character like a sculptor who won't stop until the form reveals itself from the stone. Look at it this way. Every thought you repeat is like a builder working in your mental city. If you keep repeating, "I can't," you're building a wall that'll be taller tomorrow. If you say, "I can try," you're opening a door that'll be wider next time. You decide which kind of city you want to live in. And the powerful thing is, this change is always within reach. You don't need anyone's permission. You just need to observe which routes you walk every day and dare to choose another. And even if that new road feels awkward at first, remember, that discomfort means you're building a new neighborhood in your mind. So the next time you think, "This is just who I am, I can't change," stop and remember, you're not a rock. You're a city under construction. Every day you have the chance to tear down a street that no longer serves you and open a path that brings you closer to the life you truly want. Your mind isn't finished. It's being built right now, with the thoughts you think and the actions you take. So tell me in the comments, what new road do you want to start building in your mind today? And if you want to say it loud and clear, and commit to yourself, write, "Today I begin to rewrite my mind." Lesson 27. The echo of your environment lives inside you. Tell me, Sue, have you ever noticed that you speak using the same expressions as your friends? That you repeat jokes that aren't yours, gestures you didn't invent, even ways of thinking you never questioned? Have you noticed how your mood shifts depending on who you spend your day with? Spend time with someone optimistic, and you walk away energized. Spend time with someone who constantly complains, and you leave exhausted. So, what does that tell you about your environment and what it's doing to your mind? Even the Stoics could have fallen into this trap, but they understood it early on. Your mind is never isolated. Epictetus summed it up with a powerful warning. Surround yourself with those who make you better, because whether you like it or not, whatever you breathe in from others eventually finds its way into your mental lungs, and what you absorb every day becomes part of who you are. Think of it this way. Your environment is a resonance chamber. If you spend time around someone who always complains, their tone starts seeping into yours. If you surround yourself with people who are trying to grow, you'll naturally start thinking, speaking, and acting more like them. It's like when you hear a catchy song, even if you don't want to. It gets stuck in your head, and you start humming it without realizing. This happened to me recently. I spent the afternoon with someone who seemed determined to find a problem in everything. He complained about the weather, the government, the traffic, the food. At first, I laughed it off. But by the time I got home, I felt irritated for no reason, like I'd just run a mental marathon. What happened? Nothing dramatic. I simply absorbed his energy. As psychologists explain, emotions are contagious. The brain mirrors what it observes, almost like it's copying the other person's mood. And this isn't just a fun fact, it's science. Studies show that when we spend time with pessimistic people, our bodies produce more cortisol, the stress hormone. In other words, being in a toxic environment doesn't just drain your motivation, it also wears you down physically. Marcus Aurelius might have called it a form of silent self-destruction. Exposing yourself every day to poisoned air, then wondering why you can't breathe. But here's the hopeful part. Just like negativity is contagious, so is positivity. The Stoics sought out mentors and companions who inspired them, not because they were perfect, but because they embodied the virtues they wanted to cultivate. They knew that surrounding themselves with people of integrity was like training in a good gym. The energy of the place pushes you to show up as your best self. Think about it in your own life. If you want to become more patient, what's going to help more? Spending time with someone who snaps at everything or someone who stays calm in chaos? If you want more discipline, who will support that? The friend who always procrastinates or the one who sticks to what they promise? Your environment is the soil where your roots grow. If it's fertile, you thrive. If it's barren, you wither. This isn't about living in fear of who's around you. It's about being aware. The Stoics said we must guard what we let into our minds the same way we guard what we put into our bodies. You wouldn't knowingly eat something rotten. So why accept conversations, people, or spaces that poison your mind? Here's a Stoic practice you can try. Redesign your spaces. Marcus Aurelius found refuge in writing to clear his inner environment, even when the world outside was chaos. You can start with your physical space. Want more clarity? Clean your workspace. Want more inspiration? Surround yourself with symbols that remind you of your values. And on a personal level, reduce how often you interact with people who drain you. No need for drama. Just create some space and choose more carefully where your time goes. My friend, remember this. No one becomes strong by willpower alone. We are shaped by what we breathe in every day. If your environment is a swamp, you'll end up covered in mud. But if it's a clean river, your mind will flow with clarity. And the good news is, you're not stuck where you are. You can choose who you listen to, who you spend time with, and which places feed your peace or your chaos. So ask yourself this Stoic question: is my current environment strengthening me or weakening me? The answer, even if it's uncomfortable, is your map for where to go next. Because changing your environment isn't selfish, it's mental survival. And when you make that choice with clarity, your mind begins to transform. And with it, your life. Lesson 28. Start building your own path. Imagine you're walking along the shoreline. You see footprints in the sand and decide to follow them. They seem safe, as if someone already tested the ground for you. You walk and walk, but after a while the tide washes those footprints away. You stop, look back, and realize there's nothing behind you. That's when it hits you. You never left your own mark. You were just stepping into someone else's. Life works the same way. When you choose to live according to what others expect, you end up on a path that doesn't feel like yours. And that's the perfect recipe for insecurity. Think about it. How many of your decisions have been just to avoid disappointing someone? You studied a degree you didn't care about because it sounded prestigious. You accepted a job that didn't motivate you because it seemed stable. You said yes to commitments you didn't want just to avoid judgment. And then one day you look in the mirror and something feels off. You're living a life that isn't yours. It's a Frankenstein of other people's expectations. No wonder insecurity takes over. How are you supposed to trust yourself when you've never had the courage to truly listen to yourself? J.K. Rowling's story reflects this perfectly. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, her manuscript was rejected over 10 times. She could have shoved it in a drawer, convinced that the world was right and she had nothing to offer. But she didn't. She chose to build her own path, even in silence, even without validation. She kept going, trusting that her story mattered, even if no one else could see it yet. That choice to walk with purpose was what turned her insecurity into confidence. Even a Roman emperor asked himself the same question: is it worth carrying a weight you didn't choose? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it's bearable, then bear it. Stop complaining." It might sound harsh, but it's freeing. Because what matters isn't whether the weight is heavy or light, it's whether it's yours. Carrying a burden you chose, even if it's tough, makes you stronger. Dragging around one that was handed to you, even if it's light, wears you down. Living with purpose means accepting the effort, yes, but with the certainty that you're building something that's truly yours. You probably know a story like this. Someone studies law because it's a respectable career, but deep down, they dream of making music. They live in that disconnect for years, surrounded by textbooks and exams that mean nothing to them, while their guitar gathers dust in the corner. The insecurity grows because even though they're getting good grades, they feel like they're living halfway. Until one day, they record their first song and realize something powerful. It was never about lack of talent. It was about never making a decision of their own. That one step changes everything, because for the first time, they're standing on ground they chose. So my friend, if you want to walk toward real confidence, you have to start building your own path. Not tomorrow. Not when others approve. Now try this. Write down your personal goal. even if no one understands it or claps for it. Maybe you want to learn photography, even though everyone around you says there's no money in that. Or maybe you dream of running a marathon, even though you've never been sporty. That piece of paper isn't for convincing the world. It's to remind you that your desire deserves space. It's like planting the first seed of a tree. You might not see it yet, but it's already growing roots. Then, do a simple but powerful exercise. Think of 3 things you do only for external approval. Maybe you stay in a WhatsApp group that adds nothing to your life, just so people won't be offended if you leave. Maybe you say yes to every weekend plan even when you're exhausted, just so no one thinks you're boring. Maybe you dress a certain way because someone told you years ago that it suits you, even though it no longer feels like you. Write them down and let go of at least one this week. It'll feel awkward at first, but then comes the relief, like taking off a backpack you didn't even realize you were carrying. And add this. Create a simple daily ritual to remind yourself that your path is built one step at a time. It could be a phrase you write on a post-it and stick on your bathroom mirror. Something like, "Today, I live for me." It could be spending 5 quiet minutes on a personal project before opening your inbox. Or even something symbolic, like wearing a bracelet or ring that reminds you of your commitment to yourself. It doesn't need to be big. What matters is that every morning you see something that reminds you. You're not living someone else's life. You're finally building your own. Because in the end, what feeds insecurity the most is living on borrowed time, walking paths written by others, following footprints the tide will erase. Clarity and confidence show up the moment you decide your life deserves to be its own road, marked by your steps, your stumbles, and your strength. Marcus Aurelius was right: if it's bearable, bear it, and move on. Because in the quiet, daily act of building your own way, you'll find the most unshakable way to eliminate insecurity from your mind. Lesson 29. Stop negotiating with your mind. My friend, let's be real, because I know this has happened to you more times than you'd like to admit. You sit in front of your computer, open the tab with the report you need to finish, stretch a little, take a deep breath and say to yourself, "Okay, just 5 minutes on TikTok and then I'll start." 5 minutes. That's the promise. But 20 minutes later, you're watching a dog doing yoga, someone baking bread with no hands, and a guy dancing with a watermelon on his head. And the report? Oh, it's doing just fine, still untouched. Meanwhile, you're stuck in a mental trap disguised as a harmless break. Your mind doesn't shout. It negotiates. It shows up like your personal assistant. "You're really tired today, you'll do better tomorrow. Just 10 more minutes in bed, you deserve it. Do the easy stuff first to warm up." But no, you're not warming up. You're spiraling into excuses dressed up as logic. And the more you give in, the more power that voice gets. Because every time you sit there debating with your own head, you lose. That's where Jay Alderton would cut straight to the point. I picture him peeking over your shoulder while you're on your 3rd video and saying, "Seriously? You're gonna let your day slip away like this?" Because Jay, coming from the military world, doesn't negotiate with his mind. He says that when his alarm goes off at 5 in the morning, there's no discussion. He gets up. Period. Cold outside? Tired? Doesn't matter. Because every time you give in on something small, your mind takes note. And next time, it'll be even easier to give in. It's like your brain keeps an invisible notebook. If you let it slack off on Monday, it'll ask for more on Tuesday. And by Wednesday, it won't even ask. It'll just take it. Marcus Aurelius, despite carrying the weight of an empire, left us a phrase perfect for those moments when you're about to delay everything. Do every act of your life as though it were the last. Think about it. If today were your last chance to act, would you really want to spend it watching fridge organization videos? What you often don't realize is that this inner negotiation isn't harmless. It's like opening the door to a thief, one who comes with excuses. And the worst part? You're the one offering him coffee and clearing his path. Because when you're not the one deciding, your impulse is. And that impulse doesn't want your success. It wants your comfort. So what could you do next time your mind starts negotiating? Write down, big and bold, exactly what you're going to do, even if you don't feel like it. Like a contract with yourself. Because once your mind tries to convince you there are better plans, it's already decided. The deal is closed. Try something else that might sound silly but works. When your mind starts making excuses, laugh. Really, laugh out loud. Like what it's saying is ridiculous, because it is. Humor breaks the loop of repetitive thought, and it reminds you that that voice only has power if you give it power. And if you're thinking, yeah, but I have such a hard time starting things, then remember this. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it without thinking. Don't negotiate, don't analyze, just do it. Get up, wash the dish, send the email. Because all that time you spend debating could have already been enough to finish it. Sometimes thinking about doing something takes more energy than just doing it. Your mind doesn't need motivation. It needs direction. And if you keep opening the negotiation table every morning hoping to win, get ready. You'll lose more often than you win. But if you learn to decide without waiting to feel ready, without asking permission from your laziness, your mind will stop being a roadblock and start pushing you forward. Because the one who decides builds. The one who hesitates too much always stays at the starting line. Lesson 30. The people around you are programming your mind. Epictetus had an unbreakable rule for his students. Watch carefully who you share a meal with. Not out of social protocol, but because he understood something most people ignore. The people you spend time with don't just affect your mood. They reprogram your thinking, your standards, your limits, your sense of what's possible, and they do it without you noticing. Drop by drop, conversation by conversation, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize who you've become. The Stoics didn't say this to sound elitist. They said it as a matter of mental survival. They knew you can have all the inner discipline in the world, but if you spend your time around people who constantly pull you down, eventually they'll succeed. Not because you're weak, but because that's how the human mind works. We are social creatures at the deepest level. We adapt to our environment to fit in. There's a story about Musonius Rufus, Epictetus's teacher, that illustrates this perfectly. One day a wealthy young Roman came to him asking to become his student. Musonius looked him over and asked, "Who are your 5 closest friends?" The young man began listing names of other rich boys known for wild parties and excessive living. Musonius interrupted him, "Come back when you've changed your friends. I can't teach you Stoicism if you're going to spend your evenings with people who live the exact opposite." The young man was offended. "But they've been my friends since childhood. I can't just abandon them." Musonius cut him with a question. "And what are they doing with you? Are they bringing you closer to who you want to become, or pulling you further away?" The silence that followed was answer enough. This isn't about being cruel. It's about being honest about the impact people really have on you. You can care about someone and still recognize that being around them leaves you worse than before. You can have history with someone and admit the relationship no longer builds you up. And you can make tough decisions about who you spend time with, without feeling guilty. It's not selfishness, it's mental protection. Picture 2 people training for a marathon. The first surrounds themselves with experienced runners, people who wake up early, eat intentionally, talk about technique and progress. At first, it's hard to keep up, but slowly, they adjust. They rise to that level. They adopt the habits. They become a marathon runner. The second stays with their usual friends, people who prefer beer and the couch, who mock their effort to run, who say skipping one day won't matter every time they consider training. Even with the same motivation at the start, little by little they slip. One missed day turns into 2, then a week, and eventually they quit. Same goal, same initial ability, completely different outcome. Not because of willpower, but because of environment. The people around you function as a thermostat for your life. If the thermostat is set low, you can try to crank the heat all you want, but eventually the thermostat wins. It pulls you back to its level. The Stoics understood this. Seneca wrote entire letters on the topic. He warned that spending time with people who live without purpose infects you with that lack of purpose, that being around complainers makes you a complainer, that surrounding yourself with cowards makes you one too, not because their words convince you rationally, but because your mind absorbs their patterns without permission. And it works both ways. If you're around people who read, you'll read more. If you're around people who take care of themselves, you'll take better care of yourself. If you're around people who have deep conversations, you'll crave them too. They don't need to preach to you. Just being who they are is already influencing you. Now think honestly about the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not the ones you'd mention to sound good, the real ones, the ones you see week after week. Ask yourself, without lying, how do I feel after being with them? Lighter or heavier? Inspired or drained? Do they bring me closer to who I want to be, or further? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's valuable information. You've got 2 options. Accept that your environment will keep shaping you in that direction, or make difficult choices about how you protect your time and your energy. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting people off cold. It means consciously deciding how much time you spend with certain people, and in what settings. You can care about someone and decide to only see them in specific circumstances where their influence does less damage. You can be kind without absorbing their energy. You can listen without making their drama yours. You can keep the relationship without letting it reprogram you. But if someone is genuinely toxic, if every interaction leaves you worse off, if just being around them drains you mentally, the Stoic answer is clear. Walk away. No hate, no drama. Just walk away. Protect your mind like you'd protect your home from someone trying to rob it. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. And after clearing space, start building. Actively seek out people who lift you up. Not perfect people. They don't exist. But people who are trying. People who are growing. People who have conversations that make you think, instead of repeating the same complaints. People who challenge you to be better, instead of validating your excuses. People whose way of living inspires you instead of dragging you down. The Stoics sought each other out on purpose. Seneca and Lucilius wrote to each other constantly, even from a distance. They shared thoughts, challenged each other, kept each other focused on what mattered. They knew that alone, surrounded by the noise of Rome, it would be easy to get lost. But together, they stayed on the path. Cato the Younger was known for being extremely selective about who he spent time with. Not out of arrogance, but mental self-defense. He knew that each hour with the right people made him stronger, and each hour with the wrong ones weakened him. He made conscious decisions based on that. When colleagues criticized him for not socializing more, he'd answer, "I'd rather spend an evening with one man of character than a year with 10 who have none." Your environment is never neutral. It's always working, either for you or against you. If it's working against you, all your discipline will be used just to compensate for that constant drain. Like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain open. You can raise the water level, but it'll take constant effort. But if you plug the drain, suddenly that same effort takes you so much further. Changing your environment doesn't mean abandoning people. It means recognizing that if you want your mind to obey you, you need to give it the right conditions to grow strong. You can't train surrounded by people who say training doesn't matter. You can't grow if all you hear are voices reminding you of your limits instead of your possibilities. The people around you don't just shape your day. They shape who you become. And if you want a strong, clear mind that follows your command, you need to be intentional about surrounding yourself with people and places that strengthen that clarity. That reinforce it, not weaken it, not question it. Reinforce it, day by day, conversation by conversation, until your mind knows exactly who's in charge. Lesson 31. Distance turns drama into comedy. Think back to the last time something totally threw you off. Maybe it was recent. Someone said something you took as an offense. A plan got canceled at the last minute. You made a mistake in front of others. In the moment, it felt huge. Maybe it cost you sleep. Maybe you replayed it in your mind 100 times. But ask yourself now, does it still matter? Or has it passed? And if it's already behind you, why did you give it so much power back then? The answer is simple and uncomfortable. You were too close. When you're in the middle of a problem, it takes up your whole view, like holding your hand 2 centimeters from your eyes. That hand becomes your whole world. You don't see anything else, but if you move the hand away, suddenly you see the broader context, and the hand is just a small part of a much bigger space. Time gives you that distance automatically. That's why what destroyed you 5 years ago may now make you laugh. That relationship you thought was forever. That job you lost and thought meant the end. That comment that kept you up at night. With time, you realize it wasn't the end of the world. Just a difficult moment, one among many you've overcome. But waiting years for perspective is a luxury. While you wait, that drama controls you. It drains your energy. It consumes you mentally. Instead of your mind obeying you, it obeys the drama, reacting as if every little setback were a catastrophe. The Stoics didn't wait to see distance happen. They created it deliberately. One exercise from Epictetus. When something disturbs you, imagine it happened to somebody else, a stranger. Ask yourself how you'd view it from the outside. Chances are you'd see it more objectively. Maybe you'd even notice how disproportionate your reaction is. You might even find something comical in how seriously you took it, compared to how small it really was. Take the example of Seneca. He lost almost everything. Exiled multiple times, stripped of fortune, power, status. Yet when you read his letters from exile, you don't find bitterness. You find humor, perspective, a certain lightness even when describing tragedy. In one letter, he jokes about being sent to a rock in the sea where even goats won't live. He didn't pretend everything was fine. He understood that mental distance transforms tragedy into something manageable, sometimes even laughable. The Stoics trained for that. They learned to view their own lives from afar, like external spectators. Not to deny pain or ignore suffering, but to defang the drama, strip it of absolute power. When you're in the thick of it, problems feel huge. From above, they shrink to their real size. Once, a student came to Epictetus complaining, "My neighbor insulted me in the market, humiliated me in public." Epictetus asked, "Could that neighbor's words actually change who you are?" The student answered no, but said everyone heard. Epictetus smiled and said, "In 2 days, those everyone will be busy with their own problems. In 2 weeks, they won't remember. But you plan to spend 2 hours replaying it in your head. Who's really humiliating you then?" That question cuts deep. How much of your life will you waste on things nobody else remembers tomorrow? Here's a question that disarms drama before it swallows you. Will this matter in a month? If the answer is no, it already tells you how much of your energy, if any, you should spend now. That one decision changes everything. You can go into a meeting, receive a criticism, feel the urge to react. Instead, you pause. Ask yourself, will this matter in a month? Probably not. So instead of reacting, you respond. Maybe even with humor instead of defensiveness. The Stoics also used humor not as denial, but as disarmament. When a situation threatens to overwhelm you, stretch it to its absurd extreme. Imagine the worst possible exaggeration. A messed up presentation becomes the failure that will be studied in documentaries centuries from now. Ridiculous, yes. And that's the point. The brain sees the absurdity, and the emotional charge loses its power. Cato the Younger practiced this all the time, when enemies launched insults at him publicly, provoking him, expecting a reaction. He answered with dry irony. Once, called a bitter old man without friends, he replied, "True. That's why I have time to work on what really matters instead of pleasing people like you." The crowd laughed. The attack lost its strength. Cato moved on unbothered. Cultivating that mental distance doesn't require years of training. It just requires a conscious decision in the moment. When you feel triggered, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, will this matter in a month? What advice would I give a friend in this exact situation? How will I tell this story 5 years from now? These 3 questions shift you out of drama and into observer mode. From there you see clearly. You respond instead of reacting. You choose meaning instead of letting the moment define meaning for you. And if the drama already has a firm grip, search for the comic angle, not to deny what happened, but to regain balance. Every situation has multiple facets. Your dramatic mind only sees the tragic one. But if you look, you'll find something absurd, a little ridiculous. And that small absurdity weakens the intensity, opens space for calm. You send a wrong message, disaster, panic. But stop, breathe, and see it. Of all the lucky coincidences, the receiver at random landed at your boss. That probability alone could be comic relief, not erasing difficulty, just giving it context. And with context, you act. You don't collapse. Seneca once wrote, "Life is a play. What matters is not how long it lasts, but how well you act your part." He added with humor, "And if your role includes ridiculous moments, accept them gracefully. Comedies are just as respectable as tragedies." He wasn't saying don't feel pain. He was saying, measure it. Give it the space it deserves. Real problems deserve real attention, but they don't deserve to consume your entire existence. And most of what you dramatize isn't a real problem, just temporary discomfort blown out of proportion by a mind thirsty for drama. Life will keep giving you awkward moments, mistakes, plans that fail, words that hurt. It won't stop, but you can master the ability to step back, to see those moments for what they are. Just moments, not permanent definitions of your worth or your future, just scenes that will pass like those before them. When you master that, when you give yourself mental distance like the Stoics did, something extraordinary happens. Your mind stops being dragged into every drama. It stops reacting to everything like it's a crisis. It begins to respond like someone who knows this too shall pass, who knows that what seems unbearable now will one day be just another story. And that certainty, that constant perspective, is what keeps your mind under your control. Lesson 32. Failing is also moving forward. He was a kid who didn't really stand out. His grades were average, and when he decided he wanted to become a filmmaker, most people saw it as just another wild fantasy. He applied to one of the most prestigious film schools in the world. Rejected, tried again, another no, again, a third time, and still nothing. But he didn't crumble. He snuck into a film studio, asked for a job like someone asking for a chance to breathe, and little by little earned the respect of the very people who once ignored him. That kid was Steven Spielberg, one of the most influential directors in history. And do you know what the key was? He didn't let rejection define what he was capable of, because instead of giving in, his mind got stronger. Every no became another rehearsal. That's how it works. The difference between those who stall and those who make it isn't usually talent or luck. It's how you interpret failure. If your mind takes it as a verdict, you freeze. But if you see it as feedback, you adjust your course. And you don't need to be Spielberg to learn this. Picture it. You're prepping for a job interview that really matters to you. You've reviewed all the questions, researched the company, even visualized yourself answering with confidence. You show up with your best, but they don't choose you. That night you feel hollow. You start telling yourself, "I'm not good enough. Something's wrong with me." You feel hurt and ashamed. You don't even tell your friends. Because to you, that failure wasn't just a step. It was a direct hit to the ego. And your mind turns it into an emotional wound that anchors you, clouds your next steps, and kills your creative drive. But my friend, don't you see? Failing isn't falling apart. Failing is fine-tuning. It's like each mistake is a compass pointing you. Not this way, but you're close. It reminds me of something I heard Silvia Olmedo say. When you avoid mistakes, you also avoid the chance to really know yourself. Because only when you mess up do you see how strong you are to try again. That quote turned everything around for me, because that's when I understood it's not about avoiding failure. It's about being ready not to break when it happens. So, Do you want to train your mind to move you closer to success even when you fail? Then start with something few people ever do. Make a list of your mistakes from the past year. Nothing fancy. Just write down what went wrong. Simple as that. For example, I gave up on my business idea halfway through. I distanced myself from someone important out of pride. I passed on a job opportunity because I was scared. Writing it down stings, yes, but it also brings clarity. It shows your mind that you're not running away. Then, next to each one, write down what you learned or what you did differently afterward. What did you realize from quitting that project? Maybe it wasn't about lacking resources, but consistency. What did losing that person teach you? That sometimes apologizing in time is worth more than being right. And what about that job? That the fear of not being ready can rob you of more than any failure ever could. And if you haven't learned anything yet, leave it blank. But don't cross it out or erase it. That mark on the page will be your reminder. This is still a place where you can grow. Your mind can't push you toward success if every time you stumble, you let it punish you. Failing is still moving forward. If you learn to walk with feet full of scars, because every scar proves you tried, that you moved, that you didn't stay stuck. Marcus Aurelius said it clearly. Just because something seems hard doesn't mean no one can achieve it. What's hard doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do in spite of it. Because, my friend, if every time you fail, you grow stronger, then every step, even the shaky ones, brings you closer to the most powerful version of yourself. Lesson number 33. Learn to control your reactions. Has this ever happened to you? You're calm in your car, music playing, everything's fine. Then suddenly someone honks at you in the middle of traffic. And in just 1 second, you're already building a full-blown horn war in your head. You feel attacked, like you have to respond, like you can't just let it go. The result? You go from being at peace to handing your calm over to a stranger in a Fiat Panda who probably won't even remember you. And here's the interesting part. It wasn't the horn that stole your peace. It was your reaction. Insecurity works the same way. It's not about what happens. It's about how you interpret it. Someone sends you a dry "okay" on WhatsApp and you spend 2 hours spiraling. Are they mad? Did I upset them? Was that sarcastic? Then a voice message arrives full of laughs and everything clears up. But by that point, your mind has already tied itself in knots. The insecurity wasn't in the message, it was in your reaction. Now imagine what Epictetus would do if he got that dry "okay" on WhatsApp. Do you think he'd spend 2 hours decoding secret meanings? Most likely, he wouldn't even register it as a problem. And that's where we can learn. Because the things that trigger insecurity in us only have the power we choose to give them. Picture your mind as a thermostat. The world might be in the middle of summer or winter, full of chaos or calm. But you decide whether inside you're sitting at a cool 72 degrees or boiling with rage. That's self-control. It's not about what happens out there. It's how you adjust your internal settings. And the Stoics were clear about this. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our opinion of them." In other words, peace or chaos isn't caused by events. It comes from your interpretation of those events. And while it might sound ancient, science confirms it. Psychologist Daniel Goleman, author of Emotional Intelligence, describes something called the amygdala hijack. That moment when your emotional brain takes over and the rational part shuts down. That's why you explode without thinking, as if your mind has been taken hostage by anger. The key is learning how to interrupt that hijack. Breathe, observe, give your rational mind just enough time to step back in. So, my friend, the next time life pushes your buttons, you don't need to explode or shut down. You can train yourself, starting small. Begin with something as simple as breathing. Yes, really. I know it sounds basic, but do you actually know how to breathe? Try it right now. Short inhale, then inhale a bit more, then a long exhale. Do it a few times. It may feel small, but that moment breaks the impulse and creates space. And in that space, clarity appears. Because you don't need to solve everything. You just need to take one small step. Send the message, make the call, move a single piece forward. That already starts turning insecurity into confidence. Another practice, create a trigger map. For 1 week, write down every moment that makes you react without thinking. It could be a honk, an email from your boss, or even silence from someone close. Just naming your triggers reduces their power, because once you know what sets you off, it no longer catches you off guard. And don't forget humor. Yes, seriously. Next time something annoys you, imagine a comedian describing it on stage. Suddenly, that drama turns into a joke, and the moment you laugh, you reclaim control. Because clarity doesn't always show up through seriousness. Sometimes it comes the moment you decide not to take things so seriously. Seneca summed it up powerfully. The strong man is the one who rules himself. That's what gives us freedom. Because when you learn to govern yourself, you stop being a hostage to your reactions and realize that the security you've been chasing is already inside you. Turning insecurity into clarity and confidence isn't magic. It's a habit. Every time you choose your response instead of letting the world choose it for you, you're building that inner strength. So next time insecurity shows up or life tries to shake you off center, remember, the reaction is in your hands. You can't change the noise of the world, but you can decide whether you let it invade your calm. And in that choice, little by little, insecurity starts to disappear from your mind. Now tell me, have you ever lost your cool over something as small as someone cutting in line at the supermarket? Drop it in the comments, or write, "The control is mine." So we know you're here training your mind with us. After all, that's what this community is for, to remind each other that clarity is a muscle, and we train it every single day. Eliminating insecurity from your mind isn't a one-time act or a magic formula. It's a path you build every time you choose to move forward, even without all the answers. Every time you decide to trust yourself more than the doubts you inherited from others. Clarity and confidence don't just show up. They're trained in your daily actions, in the boundaries you set, in the things you finally stop postponing. And when you look back, you realize the fear never truly disappeared. It was you who learned to walk alongside it without letting it take control. If you've made it this far, drop this in the comments. Today I choose to trust myself. That tells me you're part of this community that doesn't give up. Subscribe and turn on the bell so we can walk this path of wisdom together. You've got more videos on screen waiting for you, because every step counts. Click now, and let's keep learning together.